be here. I love you all.
Hello and welcome to the Scannain Podcast, your weekly look at the world of film news, Irish International. I'm your host, Darren Mooney. Joining me are
Luke,
Jay,
Grace.
So we're going to talk about what we normally talk about. We're going to talk about the top 10, the new releases, and the week in film news. But let's start with what we normally do. So what have you watched since last we talked, Luke?
Well, a couple of things that I've watched recently. I think they're not kind of top 10 material, unfortunately. But
Alas.
I think a couple of us have seen them, so I might kind of hold off on those. That's Always Be My Maybe. Have people?
Yep.
Yes.
And Booksmart.
I'm the only one that hasn't seen Always Be My Maybe. God damn it.
Well,
You're also
we'll
the
get
only
to
one who
it.
hasn't seen Booksmart now.
God damn it.
But kind of other stuff.
You're still cool,
I've
Jay.
been-
Thanks.
Not till you see him.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Keep me humble.
Yes. But yeah, no, other stuff I've seen recently. I saw Cam finally on Netflix.
I like Cam.
The Cam Girl horror movie.
Oh, okay, yeah, yes. Which is great.
Yeah.
I thought you said Cam as in
yeah,
same,
yeah.
I was like Cam.
I'm trying to
Sorry.
parse my memory.
Was not Cam.
I knew where you were
watching
at.
it. It's very
good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really good. It has a way of keeping that tension that it establishes very early on, like from the first scene, and kind of maintaining that same level of kind of dread all the way through without having to push it too far or kind of go too crazy a place.
Yeah.
Because you're watching it and you're kind of waiting for when is the kind of penny going to drop, when are they going to start telling me what's going on, and kind of because I don't really want to know, because the
horror is more existential to a certain
and
extent, metaphorical and abstract.
The idea is that it's going through of identity and the personas that people construct for themselves, both specifically within that kind of sex work and
Generally,
in general.
And the internet and the way that we do that.
That's all coming across clearly enough that it doesn't need to be said.
We don't need the ancient Babylonian myths. Tell us.
Yeah,
segment.
or it doesn't need to go to a kind of a.
If you look back
Funnily enough, I did watch Sinister last week.
There you go.
we can trace this back to Mesopotamian glyphs. They speak of a
Nobody has to go to the library, so
and nobody gets to talk to Vincent D'Onofrio on Skype. Rage.
No, just Tinker or whatever your man's name was. But yeah, no, it was very good. Kind of darkly funny in moments, which I appreciated. And like Madeline Brewer is fantastic in it.
Yeah, she's great.
Again, grounds the whole thing from very early on and kind of puts you in that place of dread with her, which for a horror movie to do, it's not easy, but when they pull it off, that's always great. Really good stuff. And I also watched the Craft for the first time recently.
Oh,
The first time?
Yeah.
Oh
taking
my
us
goodness.
back to those heady days of 96?
96.
96.
And yeah, that's also. I was actually I kind of thought that I would like it. I really, really liked it. I was actually very pleasantly surprised.
It feels like a film that's much more up to date.
Yeah, and I think that it is getting a remake soon. I think there
That
is
is
something
completely
in
unnecessary,
development,
but yes.
but you can kind of understand why. As long as they don't kind of do a Heathers remake on it, that
Oh, God.
I think that'd be kind of interesting. But this is enough on its own. It's really good. It's just as a kind of 90s teen movie. It's kind of up there with the best examples of that genre before you even get into the kind of horror elements of it, in the way that it explores the dynamics between this kind of group of girls. Like it's a Wiccan coven, but it's also a group of friends, and the kind of the politics of that and all that is kind of, they work through that quite well, particularly in the film's first half. Then you get into the kind of more special effects laden stuff in the second half. But yeah, really good. And considering that this came out in, as you say, 1996, and the TV series of Buffy the Vampire Slayer is the year after.
Yeah,
and I know that was its own movie in that years ago, but just the influence of this, I think, on that is really understated.
Yeah.
The kind of, just in the terms of the look, that kind of those Spanish mansions, that kind of California
Los Angeles
style
sort
of it. And in terms of, in Buffy, the kind of day-to-day, again, high school dynamics and plotting and
the mundanity almost
Yeah.
of the...
lots of that coming from this, because, you know, Joss Whedon will talk until the cows come home about how he came up with Buffy and the girl in the alleyway and all that. But in terms of the actual practical, what that show
mechanics
was,
of, yeah.
a lot of that comes from this. And when you look at that show's influence, you trace it back to this, you know, it really is kind of an underseen thing. I wish I had seen it years ago. It was very good.
Also, Charmed. The theme song for Charmed plays in the middle of this,
There you go.
which I love.
And
This was around the time in the mid-90s where Wicca was having a moment, if I remember correctly, culturally speaking. So you had Charmed, you had that, you had even things like the Wiccan Council America praising the X-Files episode about Wicca, of all things as well.
yeah, I think one of the actresses I was reading on Wikipedia actually was into all the Wiccan stuff at the time, I think. So, yeah, goes through. Good stuff.
90s nostalgia.
I saw at the IFI as well, Fight Like a Butterfly.
Oh, Camille Winters.
Yes, which is doing really well, actually. I think it's kind of
I mean, it's going to be 4 or 5 weeks into it, yeah.
Which is good
great
to
to
see.
yeah.
And I liked it. I wouldn't be overly mad about it. Like, I mean, Winters, her direction of this is quite good. And just in terms of its approach, the way that it actually shows travelers' stories and their
The day-to-day
lives
stuff
and,
almost to a certain extent. Like, again, it's the section in the middle where they just, like, wander, and you get that real almost slice of life, or what it must be like.
And particularly in the first act,
Yeah.
that all comes
Oh, the
through
community,
quite
yeah.
well. Yeah, just the kind of community stuff, and like Hazel Coop.
I'm
I'm constantly pronouncing people's names wrong on this podcast, so I give up. But
You're not the only one.
Dupe,
You really
rather.
are not. The only one.
She is really good in this, just by giving her character that kind of, everyday frustration of not being able to be what she wants as a woman and as a traveler, and that kind of comes through really well. And when Winters is focusing in on that,
Yeah. It's done very artfully as well. Like, again, it's something that's very easy to reduce to a cliche, but I think how the film handles it is particularly effective.
yeah,
The way it communicates through looks and glances.
yes,
Even like little things like a trace of blood here or there, that sort of thing.
yeah. The kind of the story beat of the deadbeat drunken dad, that kind of thing, we've seen a lot of times before, especially in Irish films. And it kind of, once you get into that kind of episodic, on the road kind of part of the story, it kind of takes over a little bit in a way that I found frustrating. Because when you're looking at how, the title of the film and that kind of connection to Muhammad Ali, and where her character is,
How much of the film is
finding
drawn from that, yeah.
that connection. It's coming
Because
from...
it's based around, well, I'd say based around is an exaggeration, but it's anchored in Ali's visit to Ireland, even though it's not a direct correlation, but it's very much informs a lot of what's happening.
You see how she and other travelers in the film, they have that connection with Ali, which comes from Ali's self-worth.
Yeah.
Which was...
It's Roddy Lawler has that great line where he's
oversized
explaining,
and-
yeah. It's that almost commitments line, except it kind of plays a little bit better in context.
And if it was more focused on her character finding that same thing through her, love of boxing and that would have been... I would have liked that. The stuff with the dad, as I say, it just kind of ended up eating up a lot of the runtime, and then you end up in this place at the end.
Yes.
This very tonally muddled kind of climax.
And it's almost obligatory. It's forced. It doesn't feel like a lot of what I liked about the film was the naturalistic element of it, and it feels like you've taken that, but you've grafted on the rhythms and structures of a traditional sporting movie. Particularly at the climax, when it becomes very obvious.
And characters kind of explicitly stating, if you can do this, then that means this. And it's like, well, we actually left that behind.
We haven't been focused on that for a very long time.
But it's good.
No, the performances are great. And I mean, whatever about the drunken Irish father being a stereotype, particularly for the gritty Irish drama, I think the performance was actually quite good there as well. And yeah, Dupe is amazing. She's one to watch.
Yes. And then the other big one for me that I've seen recently is Birds of Passage. This is
the Colombian film.
Colombian, Ciro Guerra, who directed Embrace of the Serpent.
Oh!
It's Guerra and Cristina Gallego, she has produced his other films and co-directs this. And yeah, this is really, really good. I loved Embrace of the Serpent. That was kind of one of my top films of 2016 at the time, particularly for the way that it tells Indigenous people's stories. It had people from actual Indigenous Colombian tribes acting in that film, and really it plays with kind of a sense of history and with the wiping out of a history from external forces across two different timelines in a really interesting way, and in a very visual way, using the actual Amazon River as a way of moving across time and back and forth, and what remains constant and what is eroded by these things. That film is really good. This film it is doing a very similar stuff through the kind of conventions of a gangster film in a really interesting way, because you have, again, this is an indigenous tribe from Colombia, the Wayi tribe, and the premise of it is that this guy comes in, he wants to marry one of the girls from the tribe. Her mother, who's kind of the matriarch, doesn't trust him because of the very strict kind of rules and traditions of their culture. So she has it set up that you can marry my daughter if you present this dowry that is, by their understanding of things, impossible to get. And he makes the money to do it. This is in the 60s, by selling marijuana to Peace Corps American hippie dippy kids, and that brings this kind of trade into their way of life. Yeah, that
has impacts down the line,
and starts to erode their traditions and their everyday life and their sense of morality, going from the 60s into the 70s and 80s. And the way that it shows that happening to these individuals, and therefore this tribe, and therefore Colombia, and how that was kind of marred by drug wars and things like that, is really good and really visual as well. Guerra and sorry, I have the name here. Guerra and Gallego will do really interesting things. They'll show you standard gangster movie visuals, like the gaudy mansion, but it's set against the backdrop of a flat, plain Colombian barren desert, and it's completely empty on the inside. Or you'll see again this matriarch or woman who is in the scene very upset about the kind of decline of their culture and their traditions, but she's wearing this big gaudy gold watch, and the focus is on her face, but the watch is there, and we hold long enough that
you pick it up and you understand what it means in the context of what's happening.
Yeah, and the way this is kind of presented over decades, and it manages that really well, because the film is kind of split up into these different songs, as I put it, and the songs have this kind of cultural relevance to how stories are told traditionally through the culture, and there's a sense of these are stories that are being told but forgotten in real time, kind of a thing. And yeah, just that real decline of culture happening, falling from their hands as it's playing out. Really well done. Carmina Martinez plays the mother, and it's kind of set up in the early going. You assume that this story is about this guy coming in and his drug trade, because we're trained to read these stories that way. Narcos and things like that. But her position of, I'm maintaining this
community
tribe, and it's way of life, but actually I'm being corrupted in my efforts to do that. It kind of takes on this like Michael Corleone kind of. It's actually her story, and she's fantastic in it, the actress, and it's all done really, really well. Really impressed by it. Well worth checking out.
All right, Jay, what have you watched since last we talked?
Not a huge amount actually, but for a change. But we'll see where we did. I watched Crooklyn, the Spike Lee film, which is a movie and I hadn't seen before. And this is a kind of semi-autobiographical tale about his upbringing, and it's co-written with a couple of siblings. And it's about a kind of, I presume based on the parents, but I'm not 100% sure how accurate it is, of a kind of a teacher and a kind of frustrated musician bringing up 5 kind of massively unruly kids in Brooklyn and the kind of neighbourhood that it exists in. And it has that kind of feel of do the right thing kind of neighbourhood, you know, as kind of melting pot elements, but not as ferocious as that film, but much more kind of kids growing up, coming of age kind of thing a little bit, and kind of being aware of the kind of inherent kind of problems around you, including the parents' marriage, which is a bit rocky. It's really, really good. Not quite top level Lee, but fairly close to it. It's this kind of joyful kind of summer of kind of, you know, fire hydrants with water coming out, you know, the usual kind of thing that you get those New York stories and kids racing down the street. And it's these great, kind of begins with these kind of great high shots from Lee, and kind of crane shots of kids sprinting down the street, getting in the way of adults and stuff. It has that kind of evocative thing. And this within the first like 2 or 3 minutes, which I really, really liked, and set the scene perfectly on the credit sequence. As Alfie Woodard and Delroy Lindo as the parents, who are both.
That's pretty great. That's fantastic.
So it's great casting. And a young girl called Zelda Harris, who's the young girl of, there's 4 brothers, 4 guys, and she's the girl.
Do I know the name Zelda Harris from somewhere? It sounds familiar.
I looked her up. She hasn't done a lot since then. But the story kind of swings around to focus on her. It's mostly her story, which I suspect it's kind of Lee's sister or one of the sisters in the family. And it's really good. It's quite affecting. There's and the great thing is the way Lee is that kind of that I've been saying for Young's it's kind of slightly underappreciated how much of a technically skilled director he is in amongst the kind of angry kind of political films that he makes, of how well he works the camera.
Yeah, it tends to get a bit lost.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
Because when you're talking about Lee, you're inevitably going to end up talking about
race and kind of politics and all the usual kind of things. But he's a technically master of a filmmaker. Incredibly
versed in film history and all this.
And it's this great sequence where the young girl gets kind of bumped down to south to the aunt and uncle's house to kind of have a different experience for a month, and her cousin is down there, and it's like the south is filmed as a kind of alien landscape. It's this kind of, where's the city gone? You know, it's kind of trees and crickets. Never heard of cricket in our life. That kind of stuff. It's just like, what do you do down here? Like, you know, it's like, where's the chaos? You know, it misses the chaos completely. Like our city kind of noise and sounds and people and the kind of shouts and the neighbours and people getting shot in the street and stuff, all sorts of mad stuff. But she misses it so much. Like, it's just too quiet and too nice and too friendly and everything like that. I really like that. The soundtrack is absolutely glorious. Some absolutely beautiful standards, kind of great songs. Some of which I didn't really know before, and some that are kind of famous, but absolutely glorious and really perfectly pitched in terms of the moments that are used in the film. The only thing I'd say that kind of to negative sense a little bit is that's a little disjointed in the second half. The story kind of focuses a little bit on a couple of certain things that kind of just throws the story out a little. Then the kind of natural feel in the first half kind of dissipates a little bit, which is unfortunate to some degree, but probably inevitable given what they were kind of aiming for. But I really liked it, lots to recommend, and it's one of the kind of what you call Lee's standard films, which are pretty good, like, and pretty much better than a lot of people's standards.
And kind of forgotten because they're sort of
and because he's made a lot as well. Like, he's pretty kind of fast filmmaker. He's knocked out a lot of films over the years, like, and some of them get lost in the shuffle. And I'm guilty of as much as anybody. I've missed quite a few of his, and I'll keep meaning to go back and catch them. So it was great. It was very welcome to catch up on this, and absolutely recommend it. Another one I caught up with was Carmel, which Ronan has talked about a few weeks ago, I think, or maybe a couple of months ago actually. It's one of the films from Nadine Lebacki, who made Capernaum, which is in my top 5 of the year. And this is an area film of hers, and I know he's a huge fan, and he's right to be a huge fan because it's pretty goddamn great. It's the story of a kind of a beauty salon in Beirut, and the lives of kind of 5 women that kind of either work in it or frequent it or used to work in it, and that kind of intersectional area of their lives, where this is the kind of home base, I guess, as a kind of thing. It's somewhere they always return to get advice, to try help themselves out, to kind of cry, to whatever they need to do. And it's this kind of really sensual story of kind of love and kind of defeat and sadness and joy. It's just this. There's no real plot to speak of as such. The kind of scenes just kind of flow really nicely. It's really beautifully and subtly edited to kind of let the film just kind of take you along, which I really appreciate, because there's certain films where the need to punctuate sometimes can throw you out of a film. This is not this kind of really rhythmic, really perfectly pitched kind of film, and the cast are fantastic. It's kind of one of those films you can almost swoon on occasions because the scenes are so pitched just well, and moments are done so brilliantly. And like, I don't really want to say too much about the actual kind of what happens, because it's one of those films you just kind of want to wander into and kind of enjoy. And it's as much of a tribute to Beirut as well and the people that kind of stoically go about their business, particularly women, in terms of a society where they're certainly not equal, and they're certainly kind of, questioned as to what they're up to. And, are you in a relationship? Are you married? Is a kind of repeat question, because that's the ultimate kind of, if you're married, you're okay, you can do wherever. But if you're not married, then you're wanted.
Watch out.
And and you could be in serious trouble. And she makes this point without hammer over the head over and over. It's really, really good. Ron did not understand it. I really, really liked it. And absolutely.
So you're quite sweet on caramel then?
Indeed. Thank you, Darren.
Just gotta put a button on it. It's
okay. They're the good ones.
We have probably a whole 20 minutes into recording and he hasn't said one yet.
I know, right? That's probably a record. I'm thinking.
It's totes allowed.
It is. I caught up another Josephine Decker film who made Madeline's Madeline, which I'm a huge fan of. This one's called Butter on the Latch, which is one of her earlier films from 2013. It's about 2 women who kind of are friends, and it starts off in this kind of really frazzled style where one of them is ringing the other, and she's in some house and she doesn't know where she is, and the other one gets really frantic, worried, like get out of the house, kind of that kind of thing. So it starts off this kind of real kind of tense and anxious kind of horror, jittery kind of feeling to it, and then it kind of film kind of moves on slightly, and you end up where the 2 of them meet at this kind of folk festival. Like, folk festivals are never a good idea. Like, we've seen enough horror films to know that you should.
Does it end up as a folk horror, Jay?
Yeah, a little bit. There's certainly trace elements of it here, and there's moments where it kind of reminds me of something like the Blair Witch Project, weirdly, and it's not in tone, it's more in look. Every so often it catches a certain
it has a sort of VHS sort of quality to it.
It's more the kind of positioning of bodies and angles where you see things from, perspectives and stuff like that, that makes you kind of question what you're looking at and things around that. And it's not a horror in any sense of that. It's kind of about the horror of kind of awkward friendship more than anything else, where you love somebody but you also want to punch them.
Why are you looking across the table when you say that, Jay?
I don't know what you mean, Darren.
There's so many people like this.
But there are, and the 2 women are kind of constantly apologising to each other. It's like, if they disagree, I'm sorry, but like I don't mean it to be that way. And this kind of retraction, move forward thing, which it's really fascinating in that regard.
Is there any scene where they get drunk and just yell at each other?
Well, there's a couple of scenes where one of them has like drinks this kind of, because it's a Balkan festival, so it's this kind of fuck knows what proof alcohol gets brought out, and one of them starts, it's like some sort of plum brandy that looks lethal, and one of them starts drinking it, and then she kind of wants to hang out with this guy, and the other friend is kind of paranoid about this. So it has this kind of
this takes me back.
Yeah, indeed, me too. And many times I've been drinking plum brandy and hanging out with guys, but it's like it should be better than it is, and it's not bad by any means. It's very decent, but it's if you watch any Decker films, and I've kind of watched this my 4th one, I think, her films are quite abstract and quite fractured, and the narratives are quite fractured. How it's shot, it's quite kind of busy, and it works for a lot of time. In this film, it kind of needed to settle a little bit too much, and it's a little too slight at certain points where you feel there's moments where it should push it a little bit more and things like that. It doesn't quite land in the way that you think it's going to land, and it's disappointing, I guess. The editing is great, the performances are great, but it was one of those things that 20 minutes in I thought I'm going to really, really love this. And at the end I was kind of slightly disappointed because I didn't.
It didn't click in that way.
It's fascinating and really interesting as a directorial kind of showcase. Because the filmmaker really knows what kind of story she wants to tell. And I think her stories and her films don't quite have big audiences because they're very idiosyncratic.
Well, to be fair, Madeline looks like it's going to be a slow burning break.
No, it is. I mean, it's an art house kind of.
And it's done very well, and I mean, like relatively speaking, for
it's well known and it's critically acclaimed.
Yeah,
but it hasn't translated beyond that.
Well, I mean, it only released in Irish cinemas 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw it in Galway last year.
Yeah, I know,
and it was out the year before that. I think,
I was getting screeners 2 years before that. But I mean, it's
exactly.
like, I mean, when you talk about the rollout, it's I think it's still going.
Yeah, but it's on Mubi.
Did it come out here?
It came out here about 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah,
and it was on Mubi as well. Same time.
Yes.
So where most people would have got it.
I've seen it on Mubi before.
In fairness to Mubi, though, they put all of her films on as a kind of season, the curate season, and she's a fascinating filmmaker, but she's the very definition of idiosyncratic. Like, and you might fall in with them or you might not. But like, Madeline's Madeline is great. I really love it.
It was one of your favourite films last year.
Yeah, it was. It was in my top 10. I absolutely
has a decent chance of making it this year as well.
Yeah, and next year probably. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, but no, but Latch is interesting and definitely worth watching. I'd say. I think it's only 70 minutes long as well, so it's not going to take a chunk out.
So it passes the value test.
The great test. Yeah. And lastly, I'll mention a film called Cashback. Mostly because it's terrible.
I think I know what this is.
Yes, it's an English film from 2006.
It's dreadful.
It is dreadful. Sean Ellis, who directed it, made a film a few years ago, I think called Manila something.
Manila Sky?
No.
Sorry. Oh, was this Metro Manila?
Metro Manila. Yes, that's the one. Thank you, Grace.
I haven't actually seen it.
No, but it's been on Netflix for a while, and it's kind of action-y kind of set in the Philippines. I've heard okay things about it, but he's done nothing in between this and that as far as I can ascertain. And Cashback is this story, I would guess is the best way to describe it.
I'm not sure the listeners could hear the air quotes.
Just this guy who just gets broken up with because, he's heartbroken and, and the first shot is of a girl shouting at him in slow motion and you can't hear her, but it's like, you fucking idiot, that kind of stuff. Like, and he has this dreariest, and I mean the dreariest of voiceovers. It's like, what do you do with time when, relationships break? And it goes on and on. Every single moment you see is posted with like the unending and
profound voiceover trademark.
Profound. The film really thinks it's profound. So what happens is he once he breaks up with somebody, he doesn't sleep. He's a student and he can't sleep. So he's been awake for a week and he's kind of out of it a little bit. So he kind of stumbles into this supermarket at like midnight or whatever, and they're looking for somebody to do work in a night shift. It's like, well, I might as well use my time because it's all about time and the movement of time, don't you know? Just in case you don't get that, because he'll tell you again. So he's like, I might as well get paid and do it. So at that point, then he has this kind of idea that he can free his time. Now, I've seen enough Twilight Zone episodes. I know you can freeze time in movies and all that. That's grand. I have no issue with that. Right. He's an art student, right?
Does he have more than one set of glasses?
Also, I'm initially suspicious of any art students because they're arseholes, right? But
does he have glass in his glasses?
No, what he does do is, because he's so in love with the female form. You ready?
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
Jesus, no.
He strips women off in the supermarket when they're frozen to draw them.
But he's
yes. Does he draw them like his French girls?
Yeah, but he draws them.
But
he's artist. He's an artist. He's not a creep.
So it's not
awful.
pervy?
No. Yes, right?
Those were air quotes, by the way, in front of pervy, just so we're clear.
It's like, the female form is extraordinary. I think it even kind of a reference like that. He doesn't see anything sexual in this. It's even though it's filmed in such a way that all the women are, perfectly formed goddesses, you know what I mean? Like, so they're all kind of frozen in this kind of
It's
Listeners can't see,
Yeah.
but Jay's painting quite a picture.
Yeah, thank you. He is the
Can't see, but we
dullest
can.
fuck I have seen as a lead in the film. He's the dreariest
As well as
wet
being a
sack.
pervert.
And better being a pervert and an art student.
It's very workman smoking area. The
Yes,
whole thing.
it's a workman
That's
smoking
going
area
up
the
there
movie.
with the time we
Yeah,
were talking about Damo and Ivor, and I was like, News Talk the movie.
yeah, yeah.
Niche
So-
Dublin references.
But he's dull and he's creepy. He's the worst voiceover, and yes, somehow we're supposed to identify with him as the hero, right? And
You mean you don't have a dull, creepy voiceover in your head, Jay?
I wouldn't say it's creepy. I wouldn't not say it's dull. We all have dull voiceovers linked to a
Do
certain
you
point.
think this person watched Maniac and was like, I could do that?
This was 2006, so like
And remove all evidence of taste.
that they really layer on the misogyny in the sense
Decorum.
that like he thinks he's like the film thinks he's God's gift. In fairness, the film kind of has him on a pedestal. There's a girl that works in a supermarket checkout who he fancies, so of course she falls in love with him. There's this. Do you remember the scene? Did anybody see what's the Cecilia Ahern book that became a movie with Hilary Swank?
Oh, and Jared Butler.
Yeah,
Yes, I Love You.
Yes. Do you remember the
Oh, sorry.
scene where she discovers that she can design shoes, and 5-minute montage later she's shoes in all the high street shops in New York, right? Do you remember that scene? It was great. It was ridiculous, but it's like, what? She's got shoes in the kind of Fifth Avenue shops 20 minutes later. But anyway, right?
You don't
right?
choose your passion, Jay.
Right. In
That's
this film,
passion
right?
for you.
This film is amazing, right? He's drawn all his pictures of his creepy, kind of voyeuristic ways, all his pictures of women, and then a lot of pictures of the girl in the supermarket that he's in love with because he froze time and drew those pictures of her.
Of
You don't
course
see
he
her
did.
naked. It's inferred that he might have done it, but a lot of them are headshots, so to speak, right? So he does all that. The two guys that work in the kind of deli counter / meat counter end of the thing ring him, pretending to be an art dealer, to say that, you know, we've seen your pictures and would you come in because we want to do a gallery presentation, right? And it's the first interesting thing that happens in the film in the sense that it's like, I like to see him taking out a peg or two, right? It's great. So
A
come in
whole
Monday,
peg.
Put him in
Yeah.
a boot and throw him
and
wherever.
you can put your double G on that if you want. But
Whoa. Okay.
but so he's like, on Monday morning, come in and we'll talk to you in the gallery, right? You're thinking, little fucker might get his comeuppance. Great. I'm actually kind of looking forward to this. It's the first thing that's happened. I enjoyed it. Because two lads get off the phone and start laughing and high-fiving, which I got it. I'm with those guys. I want to be one of those guys. Right? It's great. He turns up at the gallery and it's Jared Harris at the gallery, pre-fame Jared Harris thing at the gallery. And he's like,
But was he still Richard Harris's son?
was he though? Who knew?
Yeah, who knew?
But he turns to the gallery and he's like, I have an appointment with whatever his name is. It's like, yeah, that's me. He's like, I have to show him my work. And he's like, you haven't got an appointment with me, son. I don't know who you are. It's like, oh, somebody must have played a trick on me. He's like, well, you're here anyway. So let's have a look. He opens the thing, looks at 3 pictures, goes, have you got any more of these? Cut
More
to
pictures
2
of
scenes
tits?
later. He's a full gallery. No, it's not the tits. It's just the face ones because you know
God.
that's the only ones. you can bring
Tasteful.
out. The tasteful ones. 2 minutes later, he's a gallery opening,
pre-watershed.
and he invites the girlfriend who saw him kissing his previous girlfriend, who used to be in EastEnders, but I can't think of her name. Michelle Roy? Would that be right? It's like this
Oh.
guy, yeah, Michelle Roy.
Bionic woman.
Yeah, yes. It's like, and she meets him at a
She
party,
has
and
known some
and now
darkness.
she wants to like, you know, get back with him, even though she's stunning. And he looks like this dweeb of a fucking guy, right? But anyway, he kisses her by accident because she kisses him. He doesn't kiss her. The other girl sees and she storms out, so he sends her an invite to the gallery. She comes to the gallery. He's standing in the gallery being all, look at all my pictures, and they're all pictures of her. So instead of running a mile like you would if all the pictures were of you, she go, oh, you really love me. And then somebody comes over to him and is like, I'm from a New York gallery. Well, have you got any more? Because I'd be interested in having you. New York. It's like, would you fucking stop, for the love of God?
It's so cathartic.
It's the worst.
I haven't watched the film, but I feel
It's
like
it's beyond reprehensible.
Guys, like, male characters
It's a
can't be
wank
Gary
fest.
Stews or Mary Sue's. Like,
Yeah.
men never write
exactly
that kind
this.
of crap.
This is exactly
Men
this.
never write self-insert fucking bollocks.
This is
and torture
masturbatory
us to
shite
pieces.
of the highest. This is wish fulfillment creep zone territory. It's one of the worst ones I've ever seen.
Who's
It's
responsible
horrendous.
for this?
Sean Ellis. Shame on you. And the funny thing is, I went to the letterbox and kind of went through it. There's one particular review that called it a 5-star masterpiece. I was like,
FHM.
yes, yeah, get tits out, love. Yeah, it's really,
got
really,
tits and culture. What
yeah.
more do you want,
The
Governor?
Union Jack. No, it's one of the worst ones I've ever seen. I would not recommend anybody watching it because it goes on a lot longer, I think, even though it's about an hour and
How
40.
did you sit through the whole thing?
Because I knew I could get to do this and rant about it. I was like, at a certain point, you're kind of
I
committed
want
to a
to
film. You know, when
present
you
an
get to a
informed
point
rant.
like where you go, well, I'm over the kind of invisible line where I can stop watching it. I might as well just continue
Yeah.
to the end.
Yeah,
in
no,
the hopes
no,
that'll get better. It did not get better.
And then there's a point where you're just setting downhill.
I'm already in the shit.
I would murder Sean Ellis when I met him. No, I would not.
Wow, okay.
I might kill the actor, though, if I ever met him.
Okay, not better.
Who's the actor?
I'll tell you exactly who the actor is now. Let's change.
Just so the Metropolitan Police Department.
Sean, are you ready for this name?
What's his name?
Because I forgot about this. Sean. Fnar. Bigger staff.
He has done other stuff.
He's in Witness Protection. He was in Harry Potter. He was in one of the Harry Potters.
Yeah.
He wasn't in like EastEnders or something.
Yeah.
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Sorry, I'm getting weird now. I'm sorry. It's woeful. It's absolutely
all of the sugar
beyond.
From that pastry hit you at once.
I hate it so much.
Yeah,
it sounds like complete tripe.
Listeners can't see, but I want to assure you, Jay is still wearing all his clothes.
Am I though, Darren? You can only see the top half. Anyway, let's leave it.
Put your bigger staff away.
Oh,
yes. Jesus, I knew there was going to be. As soon as I knew the actor's name, I was like, "Fucking Darren's going to put on bigger staff." Well, of course he is. He's only human.
All right,
I'm done. Jeez.
So Grace,
I don't know how I'm supposed to follow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Grace.
How
Sorry, Grace. I
been?
genuinely apologise.
It's all right. Okay, so I think some of the stuff I watched might be in the top 10/new releases. So let me just quickly check. Is Rocketman the top 10?
Yeah,
of course
Okay.
it is. It's made $1 billion.
What about? Are we covering Booksmart later? Or?
no, we'll cover Booksmart now, unfortunately, because it didn't make the top 10.
Sad face. Okay, I'll come back to that. And Always Be My Maybe. Is that in the new releases?
No, that was last week, so that's already been covered.
Okay, right. Where to begin? I was sick last week, so I watched a lot of stuff, and I suppose I'll start with Sinister then. Oh, also one more thing about the top 10. Is John Wick still in there?
I believe it is.
Okay, then I'll come back to that too. Back to Sinister. Yes, I've been meaning to watch this for ages. A friend of mine told me a few years ago that this like really creeped her out.
Me too.
So...
I'm a big Sinister fan. I know not everybody is, but I am.
Oh, this is going to get interesting.
No.
I can
I've
tell
had
this
enough
is
people
kind of...
tell me that they don't particularly like it to kind of.
No, the gas part is it's not bad, but it's like it's your textbook example of a horror film that just can't stick the landing, which is a horrific number of horror films, to be quite frank. Like, it builds up this wonderful first hour or so of these kind of genuinely quite unsettling and in some ways quite disturbing bits of material and footage, and Ethan Hawke is this fantastic prick in it that you kind of feel strangely compelled to keep watching. So yeah, I was actually really on board with it in terms of the atmosphere it was setting up, and I liked the way he was discovering everything kind of piecemeal and getting slowly more and more obsessed, but I could just sense that something was going to go wrong somewhere, and something did go wrong somewhere. Now, in one sense, I kind of applaud it. I suppose I can spoil the ending because this has been out for ages, so if you haven't seen it and you don't want to know, you should turn off now. But anyway...
Or just skip like 30 seconds.
Yeah. In one sense, I kind of applaud the way it fully leans into the ending, because
that's what I kind of liked about it.
Yeah, like that's not bad in and of itself, but it is also so patently ridiculous that it's really hard to take it seriously. So essentially, Ethan Hawke has found a bunch of films in the attic of this house that he's moved into, where families are being murdered, but there's always one child in the family is missing, and it subsequently transpires that the children are doing the murdering and recording it because they've been like possessed by a demon or
that old chestnut,
something along those lines. Like yeah, speaking of Babylonian mythology as referenced earlier, but yeah, so that's basically what happens at the end of this. One of Ethan Hawke's kids ties them up and kills them all with an axe and films it, and then walks into the film projector thingy.
I kind of like
that
it did actually follow through in terms of it has an internal logic that that he would continue on and actually kill him and be that.
No, that's fair enough. I don't think that that's bad in and of itself, but it's just I think it's not managed particularly well, because you sort of go from this slow burn, gradual onslaught of really kind of a creepy atmosphere and really unsettling footage, and there's a lot of tension in it, and I think it does that really well. And then it kind of just turns into this slightly cartoonish like axe murder situation, which is so schlocky and on the nose that it just really does not fit with the earlier half of the film in my brain. My
big issue with it was always the incredibly terrible pattern recognition of everybody in there. Like, I mean, I understand it's a horror movie and you have to make bad decisions, the characters have to make bad decisions in order to move the plot along. I'm one of those people who's like, it's fine that the characters in Prometheus don't think to run left or right because they're in the middle of a crisis. But the problem... But that did give us that great line in Kong Skull Island where he was like, run to the side, you idiot! But there's... That was wonderful. My issue...
I did like that too.
My issue with Sinister comes down to the fact that the characters have the entire fucking movie to figure out what the pattern is.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there
And
going...
they needed to be explained to them by, like, sheriff or officer or whatever he's calling himself.
Yeah, how
Where he's just like, oh, did you not notice?
Yeah, how did you not notice that the film has not remained in the one place the whole time?
Yeah.
Like, what is the one linking factor between these families that all moved before getting brutally murdered?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Also, you're a terrible husband and father.
Oh, yeah, but he's an Ethan Hawke
I think that
character.
was
You're
the point,
effectively
though, in
a
fairness.
Stephen King insert here, like, but... I mean, yeah, like another fantastic entry into the pantheon of shit movie husbands, which is a
But Hawke, in
massive
fairness,
burst
is A,
in
good at
genre.
that,
Hawke is very
and B,
good at
But
he kind of... I always thought when I'm watching... I know I haven't seen Sinister in a few years.
yeah, but it also means that you're kind of happy when he gets
But
brutally
that's
axed
exactly
in the
it. I
face.
think that's,
Not so much
that's what
the
I kind
innocent
of like
wife
it.
and
No,
son.
but that's what he drags in. I think it really leans into the bad bastard husband in that way. That I think Hawke could easily probably figure it out and probably get them away, but he doesn't want to because he wants to have it all
A
for
nice
himself.
analogy of men ruining the lives of everyone
Well,
around them.
indeed, yeah. But I think
Fair
that
enough.
Hawke does commit to asshole in that way very well, actually.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of liked about it.
Yeah, no, like, it was good. I did like it overall. I just feel like it could have done with a better ending and one that was less reliant on this kind of slightly daft exposition.
Yeah, that's fair
But
enough.
as mentioned earlier, I did enjoy the brief appearance of Vincent D'Onofrio on Skype to be like, well, I have some news for you, friend. So that was enjoyable enough. What else did I watch that was a new watch? Oh, I watched The Ritual, another horror movie on Netflix, which was, again, going really, really well for the first, I'd say,
But
1.5
until it falls
act,
into the
until it's
folk
like,
horror.
now I must explain everything
Yeah, but
to you.
that's
Yeah.
all.
And it's also kind of about hidden trauma where
Yeah.
I'm overcoming that terrible thing that happened, and I just really hate that in horror movies.
I don't mind it, and I'll tell you why I like Ritual slightly more than average,
Mm-hmm.
is that I think it does pretty decent character work in the first act, in the sense that I kind of felt that kind of, the loss, the kind of thing that happens in the first bit. I felt that kind of, maybe because I'm a bloke, maybe, and that's the thing, is that kind of closed off emotional thing that, you don't want to deal with the fact that somebody died, and kind of, you want to get past it and try to be stoic about it, but also you can't get away from it because you're an idiot and you won't face it, kind of thing. I thought that was done particularly well for a film that generally doesn't put that much work into it. So when things kick off, I was kind of invested. Now, I don't think it particularly lands it in that way, and I think you're absolutely correct. But I did quite like it, though.
It's the one with Raphael Spall, is it?
Yeah.
Where they go off into
Rafe
the
Spall?
woods. Rafe Spall? I don't know.
Raphael Spall sounds like amazing. This is like his porn name.
Okay, sorry. Mr.
Hey, Raphael
Biggerstaff.
Spall,
Yeah.
Mr. Biggerstaff. Raphael Spall, we'll see you now.
Okay, Mr. Spall then, okay.
Yes. Mr. Spall, you're Timothy Spall's son, aren't you?
But yeah, so this is the
Sorry.
one where they go off into the woods, is it?
Yes.
Yes, it is,
In
basically.
Hungary or Sweden.
They're in Sweden, I think, although I suspect they're probably in Scotland, like most places.
Or Hungary or
Yeah.
Poland or wherever it's cheapest to film.
Yeah, but
Capitalism, man.
the first outfit is quite good. It's like it's got some genuinely very good horror moments in it, like right down to the way they find this creepy cabin in the woods that has some like half constructed statue revering some pagan deity, and
Oh no.
it's all pretty cool. And then they have like the first night that they spend there, they all have nightmares and they wake up screaming, and people are like, it's all over the shop. It's actually really cool. And then later on you have this prolonged information dump, essentially, where they explain everything that's going on,
hate that
and
in
I just
films.
really
It
hate
happens
that.
so many
I
horror
feel,
films, it's
I
terrifying.
really strongly feel that this is something that horror movies have got to stop doing. Like,
Yes.
just trust your audience and just roll with it. If you want to end it with one of them running through the woods with no indication as to whether or not they ever get out of the woods alive, I am completely fine with that.
I'm happy to see them
Like-
die. I'm happy not to see them
Yeah.
die. I'm happy to see and not understand what I'm watching, as long as it's done well.
I
It
can
doesn't
take my
matter.
own interpretation of that.
Yeah.
I don't need you to read me a
Like-
chapter from some stupid encyclopedia that
Yep.
you made up. Also, I'm pretty sure they said that whatever this pagan demon was is meant to be some version of Loki, which just made me laugh.
But that's the kind of Scandinavian
Yeah.
type
Well,
thing.
that MCU expansion is happening quicker than we think.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
I do remember quite liking the visuals of it. The shopping centre in the middle of the woods. in
Yeah,
particular,
yeah.
that
They
sort
do
of stuff.
good nice things like that.
I
around that.
I remember really liking the production design of it.
Yeah, I think it's as Grace pointed out, and I've had conversation with Grace, and we've gone over this a million times about horror film Third Act Expedition of us that do it, and
I know you have. What are you talking about?
that stop it. Like a lot of films kind of do really good work until they get to that point, and you wonder why they do.
I
that.
feel like they panic. Like,
Yeah.
they don't trust themselves fully enough to convey the message that they're getting across
It's
by the end.
immensely frustrating.
I mean, can you imagine if instead of the end of the Blair Witch Project, there was a full half hour of them explaining every single thing that happened?
Well, there was a sequel movie, right?
Yeah, but this Blair Witch Project
Let's
is
just
kind of
pretend that
perfect
didn't
in that way because it explains absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but it
Like,
gives you
it's-
just enough tidbits of information for you to infer what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's your interpretation or what the filmmakers intended to be canonical. But that's what makes it such a rewarding
Yeah, I do
experience, is that
completely
you've no
agree.
clue what's happening. And that heightens the horror and the immersiveness
And the
of
tension
it.
and everything else that goes with it.
More people need to do that, or at least attempt to do it. Like, even if you don't
For
do
the
it
love of
well,
God, people.
at least try.
Yeah.
Instead of just dumping your stupid fanfic on us at the end or whatever. But anyway, I also watched a film which I really love, which I'd never heard of before I picked it up in the library, called Memento Mori. This is a Korean film from, I think, 1998.
You do like your Korean films, Grace?
I do. I like the Koreans. They make good stuff.
They do.
And this is one of them.
I've never heard of it,
it's
actually.
apparently the second in a series of movies called, a trilogy of movies called the Whispering Corridor series, which are not direct sequels, but they're all kind of loosely connected stories of girls at high schools, and each film apparently looks at a different aspect of culture in South Korea. The first one, I believe, looked at how rigid the education system is and how abusive that can be, and then this film looks at specifically same-sex relationships. It has what I understand was the first depiction of, let me just double check that this is right. Yes, the first commercial Korean film to depict lesbian characters. And explicitly lesbian characters too, because there's an actual physical interaction, as opposed to it all being subtext, which I appreciate. But this was really, really good. It's such an unusual film because I was sitting watching it and like it's so basically, just to tell you the story, it starts with a character who's a pupil at the school, and she finds a diary belonging to one of the girls who's, I think they're in the same year, but anyway, she discovers that she and this other girl that she's close to were more than friends, essentially, and they're not really speaking anymore. And as she goes through the diary, she gets more background on why that is and what the relationship was like, and so on and so forth. And it's told in a really interesting way because it's not told sequentially. Like, it sort of shifts back in time, and it can be a bit weird when you're watching, because there were a couple of times when I was watching it when I was kind of like, okay, this film's kind of losing me, but then once it ends, I just feel like it's done in a way that makes it really, really haunting, because that temporal structure and the atypical structure of it makes it really interesting as a presentation of memory and perception and perspective, and how that shifts as you find out more about the characters and their experiences, but also as your perspective on things changes, especially as you get older and you start reflecting and so on and so forth. And I just found it really, really haunting. Like, it's strange because the DVD cover and some of the stuff I've seen online pitches it as a horror movie when it's not really a horror movie.
I think Koreans might just advertise everything as horror movies to get people to watch them. Just say, watch this, it's going to kill you. It's like, that's lesbians.
Like, there is a
I love how disappointed you said.
Oh no, I wouldn't be disappointed in general terms, like, but then I treat every Korean film as non-horror maybe sometimes. There's
a bit of a random sort of third act shift for like maybe the last 20 minutes into stuff that's kind of like horror, because it sort of implies that one of the characters who has, spoiler, killed herself, has possessed the girl who has the diary. Now that's like, it's just some of the imagery that they present. It makes it seem like everyone at school is going a bit postal and so on. Like, I'm not sure how literally this is meant to be read. Yeah. Some people seem to have read it literally. I'm not sure I was reading it that way. But I just really, really liked this. It was so, like, it really stuck with me when it ended, which I thought is really a sign of a positive film, because especially when you're sitting watching it and you're sometimes not following it and you're wondering why they're making certain decisions, but then when it just sits with you afterwards in this way, I think it's really, really compelling. And I think, especially if you look at it through the prism of South Korean culture, where it's so rigid and their schooling systems are so rigid and their expectations, their gender norms are so conservative, like even in this day and age. And as I understand, same-sex relationships are still kind of quite stigmatized over there. It's really interesting to look at how the central relationship, the queer relationship between these two girls, it sort of is portrayed as a way of them finding a freedom that's separate from the social structures in the school, especially because the film really explicitly portrays other female characters as having really intense competitive friendships. Like, it's not a kind of a relaxing, encouraging friendship. It's very much sort of the type of friendship where you just like egg each other on and take the piss out of each other, and it's just all very heightened and so on. So the romantic relationship between them is portrayed as almost like an escape from that, but then the fact that it ultimately doesn't work out is also a reflection on how maybe that's not always healthy. Like, the friendship isn't always healthy, this response to it isn't always healthy, but like that makes it sound vaguely anti-LGBT, which it's not. It's more just, I think that reflects more on the way they're conditioned to look at these things and what they feel they need in order to succeed, and how they internalize that sort of shame and so on and so forth. It's just, I just thought it was really, really interesting. It really stayed with me. And I'm surprised that more people don't seem to have heard of it, because
I've never heard of it.
I went Googling for like essays and articles and so on, because I just thought I want to see what other people think about this, and I could find next to none. So I don't know if maybe it made as much of a splash outside of Korea, but it's worth seeking out if you can find it. And then we'll come back to some of these in the top 10, but I will say that I watched Always Be My Maybe, and I really liked it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Although I found it to be such a weirdly conservative film. Like, I don't know, I think maybe just because it seems to place such a particular focus on conventional relationships, like the whole, I want to have a baby and I'll do it by myself if I don't find anyone, and like this insistence that they have to pair up, which I know is an aspect of rom-coms, but like it just feels really rigid here or something, as opposed to it being this refreshing thing.
Ali Wong's like best friend character is
pregnant
at the time, and that I don't think that they intended for that to feed into that, but
it's a bit of background.
It kind of does, because it's like, when are you going to?
Yeah, like that's how it came across to me, which I thought was kind of a shame. Now that could just be me, and obviously I read a lot of really positive responses to this, especially in terms of its level of representation of Asian American culture, and specifically that kind of microcosm that exists within San Francisco and LA, particularly San Francisco.
And even though it's shot in Toronto, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, like many
like everything.
films.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But like that came through very strongly, and that was really refreshing. And obviously the celeb cameo, which has been spoiled for everyone now, is really, really fun. But
worth noting an attempt to reclaim that actor as an Asian American himself. Actually,
yeah. Absolutely.
Did you hear about who their second choice was? If they could.
Yes.
Oh God,
it's amazing.
Tony Leung.
Oh, okay. I heard Paul Giamatti
from In the Mood for Love.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesus. No, yeah, Tony Leung.
It was.
That would have made more sense.
I believe that was Ali Wong's second
choice.
I think the other choice is Paul Giamatti, which I would have been much more on board with.
That sounds like a bad, weird choice.
I would have loved. I mean, Keanu's great, but
Keanu's great.
Tony, you get that Nat King Cole needle job. That would have been great.
Yeah.
Just do the exact same movie, but with Paul Giamatti in that role, and tell me it wouldn't be a million times. Well, okay, about as good as the version that we have, just in a
somewhere near as good as.
Yeah.
Exactly as good as.
I don't know. I feel like having Keanu there was kind of integral in the sense that he's a complete douchebag in it, but because he's Keanu Reeves, you can 100% see what she'd be like. Yep.
It's okay, Keanu. I wouldn't take that from anybody else, but because you're Keanu, I'm going to accept it.
He's so funny, and this was...
It was shot between sequences on John Wick 3. Again, I'm not sure how you can spoil John Wick 3, but there's, like, the film has him in New York for a bit and Morocco in another bit. This was shot in, like, the 3 days that he had off between the end of the New York shoot, at which point he flew off to Toronto to do this, and then back over to Morocco to do the rest of John Wick 3, which is great.
Well, Toronto is his hometown.
Well, I mean, he did go to, was it Winnipeg to do Shakespeare in 1996? Well, this is why he turned down Speed 2, which turned out to be a very good decision in hindsight.
That's not the reason he turned down Speed 2. The reason he turned down Speed 2 was because everything about Speed 2
is tripe.
Yeah.
But
the director of this, and I think some of the other people involved...
Fresh off the boat, isn't it?
Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23.
Yeah, okay.
And James Van Der Beek is kind of a similar, like, he plays himself, and he's a arsehole kind of thing. Like, very funny. And, I think, I kind of picked up on some of the stuff that Grace was saying as well.
It just felt like the subtext was a bit weird. But that could freely just be me.
Some of which I kind of get, because, rather than having the kind of standard rom-com, we have to have a blow-up argument out of nowhere to kind of drive ourselves apart, it has this underlying thing with Randall Park's character where he resents Ali Wong's success and different things, and when that flares up, and like he's a likable character and a likable presence in it, but when that side of him flares up, he's quite off-putting and
Unlikable.
quite quite nasty. And the film is kind of getting to there is, if you don't get over this, you know, it's not going to work out. But it's still there long enough and for often enough that again, that kind of conservatism is creeping in. It's also kind of slightly hampered, I think, by the fact that Wong is a much better dramatic actor than Park is. Like, he's very funny and he's got very good comedic timing, but I think there is a bit of a mismatch there. So again, when he's going to some of those places, the nuances of it aren't maybe coming out in a way that they could. But it's still it's very enjoyable. And,
I think my issue with it was that it felt like it was the standard model rom-com that Netflix would give you before trying to upsell you on something like Crazy Rich Asians or even Late Night This Week, or, you know, that sort of stuff. We've had like a really good run of rom-coms, and this is...
but even in a post like Set It Up and To All the Boys I've Loved Before, World, which are fairly conventional
but
in
they're
terms of their
well.
structure, but they do something very refreshing, and I think it seemed like, coming off the back of films like that, where the affection for their characters is so tangible, this film just felt like it had such a weird relationship with the characters and where they were in their lives and what they should be doing with their lives. And that just, I don't know, I found it a little bit off-putting, because I was enjoying this, but I couldn't engage with it as much as I would have liked, because I find myself going, why is this happening? This feels like a weird commentary on conventional relationships in this day and age, and that just, I don't know, it just kind of took me out of it, but I did enjoy it, so I can say that. And then, because I've been talking for 500 years, I will just mention that I saw Booksmart, and I really liked Booksmart, and
Booksmart's great.
Booksmart's
really
great. Like, it's very funny, but it also has that kind of tint of kind of melancholy to it that I really appreciated. Not just in the main two characters and that kind of school is ending and we're drifting apart kind of thing, but in all of the characters that it introduces in kind of a way that you think is set up to be dismissive, and then kind of shades them out more, like Billy Lord, who is amazingly good at this. But you're like, yeah, okay, it's kind of a all out kind of balls to the wall ridiculous kind of character, and then you have
almost developing the sort of like pathos.
I thought that was really well done.
There's an incredible empathy through it, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
I think, which elevates it above many of its contemporaries, is that it's this understanding. Again, maybe it's, you know, the whole point of it is this idea of coming of age and realizing that as a kid you don't have to be this one thing. You can party hard and get good grades, and the people who party hard don't necessarily get bad grades. You know,
that's a good lesson to come to in high school, not when you're like 25, like some of us.
I don't know what you mean.
But like, on top of that, you have this idea that absolutely everybody else is a person as well that's working through all of their stuff. I mean, even the bully, you know, the character who's introduced as the bully turns out having a much more developed role as the story goes on as well.
And it does that while still being a kind of, scenic, episodic, because they're...
Yeah, it's a night out.
So it's like, kind of thing. And those individual scenes work really well as comedic set pieces, like with Jason Sudeikis in
the Uber,
Yeah.
The Alanis Morissette karaoke.
Yes.
That killed me. But I think I would be intrigued to hear from people who are actually high school age what they think of this movie. Because
I'll let you know when I see it, Grace.
The only thing that stood out to me was I was like, this feels like a very rosy, like right down to the way it has this sort of nostalgic, vaguely orangey hue going through it. I'm like, it feels very much like somebody looking back in a wishful way at what the end of their high school experience would have been like, and like it has that sort of fantastical element to it, and I'm kind of like, I wonder if you were, I don't know, 17, 18 watching this today, would you be like, this is a pile of tripe, or would you love it?
Well, this is one of the conversations like we've had in the podcast before, where everybody except me apparently had a really crappy secondary school experience, and I'm like, this is pretty
crap. I would say flatly
middling
underwhelming
for me.
Okay, and
underwhelming, and at times, yes, crap.
I mean, it's not like I peaked or anything, but but I mean, you know, it
Didn't
wasn't.
you, Darren?
Well, I mean, yeah,
the big game. But it's not even that with Booksmart. It kind of, you could, like, this could be set in 2006 or kind of 1999, and it wouldn't change too much.
That much, yeah.
Even if you look at a film like Ma.
We'll be looking at a film like Ma.
Will we know?
Yes, Jay. Yes,
like that. the way that depicts
What's
teens
the
is a
math
lot
to
more,
you?
you know, hip and now in some ways than this, but it didn't detract from it too much. I didn't feel, and just Olivia Wilde is one of these kind of crop now of actors turning directors with kind of these
coming of age stories,
Yeah,
to a certain extent,
yeah.
like Jonah Hill, like Greta Gerwig, like
and just
even Bo Burnham, arguably.
the actual filmmaking skill on show here is actually really
it's very
impressive.
good.
Like,
There's a lot of visual flair here.
It's confident.
yes,
it's
and very kind of stylish, and the way that
charming.
doing stylish and showy things in your first feature is kind of it can be a showboaty thing, but Wilde holds off on that until it's kind of thematically relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is that the kind of restraint is very encouraging to see from any director, but particularly somebody doing their first feature. It's when they get to the party that they've been
Dosed.
dreaming of getting to for so long and all that. And that side of it as well. But where they are emotionally or chemically fits into what's actually being done with the camera, which is really cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's me, I think.
All right, then. I'm going to move very, very quickly through mine. I think Jay may have felt a bit left out after we sort of covered those two films. I think I'm going to throw one out there that myself and Jay can chew over, because I know we both watched this. Deadwood the movie.
Yes, or as I call it,
Deadwood the series finale.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I'm not getting involved in it. Is there a movie kind of thing, or am we? No, I'm not. Yeah, we both watched it. I've been waiting over a decade for this.
I haven't been waiting eagerly for it. I kind of resigned myself to the fact it wasn't happening.
Yeah,
and
but
then it sort of arrived, and it was like, hey!
There's nothing but hope that killed you. I really like this.
It's what really surprised me was the tenderness of it. It is very much. It's really odd how it is. Despite the fact, and perhaps because of the fact Deadwood was such a seminal TV show, it's structured in a large part like a TV reunion movie. It opens with a gigantic party. Then there's a funeral in the middle of it. And we close on a wedding of two established characters, which is almost like the cliche of you're doing a reunion TV movie.
Yeah.
Like you could do that model in like 1973, you could do it in 1983, you could do it in 1995 or whatever.
But
and I love that it does that, but without losing any of its quintessential Deadwoodness.
The thing about it is
Deadwooditude.
David Milch has no real interest in plot as such.
Yes.
Never really has, never really will. I think this might be his swan song.
Without getting too spoilery, the entire plot of this is your standard Western land grab.
I mean, it's
boilerplate
basic
Western stuff.
Like, he just wants to get all the people back together again and see what comes out of that.
Yeah.
And he has to stick to a certain points. Like, the thing, Milch, is like there's obviously an Alzheimer's diagnosis that's come out
which
just
shades
a couple of months back, which
um,
shades it. I think if you'd read anything about Deadwood, the TV show, huge chunks of scripts were written on the fly by him. He'd arrive with a new speech or a new soliloquy or 5 new pages just like written down 5 minutes ago, and he'd film it, and that was that. So he moves on and he'd find the edit. The show would be found in the edit in that way. This
and
wasn't HBO only locked this because
he
had minimal changes he could make, so everything was different because of understandable kind of issues around that.
Yeah. And so the rhythm of the speech is off slightly, but still it sounds
but it's
more
kind
like...
of miraculous in that way.
It sounds more like Deadwood than anything else on television. Because, I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to rewatch Deadwood before I watched this.
Thankfully.
So
for the 5th time.
I had forgotten how it has its very distinct cadence.
Yeah, and pattern and
almost Shakespearean with cocksuckers, you know?
Yeah.
Shakespeare with swearing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I adored it.
Shakespeare was swearing. Old English.
Well, I mean, that's the famous story about
the parlance of the time.
Yeah, but that's the thing with Deadwood, where like they tried doing using the era appropriate swear words,
or whatever the things, and it doesn't work.
But they found that everybody sounded like, and I quote, Yosemite Sam.
Yeah.
Gosh darn tootin'. Which is great. I kind of want to see a dubbed version where Ian McShane goes back and just dubs over.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing
Varmin
that's come up in the last few days is that W.R. Brown, who plays Dan Doherty in the show, who's quite entertaining on Twitter, did a kind of a thread of about 12 or 13 tweets about that originally when the edit was about 2 hours and 20 minutes and the movie is about 1 hour and 50, and it was very much like almost like a double episode show with more reflective stuff in it, with no flashbacks in it, for example.
Yeah.
Which
the flashbacks are probably the weakest aspect.
They are. I think initially they were quite jarring. I think by the end of it, I kind of appreciate, because if you take Asian as a thematic kind of conceit in the show, I think it works comparatively well at certain points, better than others, I would argue, but certainly at certain points it works really, really well. But it didn't need it, but I think at some points it worked, some points it didn't.
Yeah, that's it exactly. I think that you could have done it with about half, if not a third of them. Like, I'm not sure that you needed to keep going back to the box.
No, but I think it was more as well that, well, no, what if you haven't rewatched it in 10 years? That you might be, but to be honest with you, if you haven't rewatched the show, I don't see why you'd be watching this personally. Like, I
didn't rewatch the show.
No, watch the show. Like, if you weren't familiar with it,
but I mean,
it would make no sense.
I'm about to say, if you didn't watch the show, would those
what are you doing here?
No, but would those flashbacks be like, well, now I understand. Well, now it clicks.
Exactly. Flashback goes, it shows me a tiny bit that somebody had a relationship. It doesn't tell you anything, though. But it is a nod to that kind of thing. But I kind of love the Ice and Tears at the end of it, because it is very emotional. I think the last act is really lovely, and it kind of the whole plot thing and everything slows down. Everything kind of slows down in the way of almost not wanting to say goodbye, which I really liked. It's very well worth watching. I meant to watch it again. I didn't get a chance to watch it again because I'm curious to watch it again. Haven't seen it, so I can ignore certain things. And then not that there's a huge amount of it, but I'd certainly ignore it. I just luxuriate a little bit more. So a very, very melancholic goodbye.
I quite liked its thematic stuff as well. The idea of Deadwood being a show about like people trying to hold back progress as embodied by Hearst, and this idea of inevitability.
Fucking Hearst.
Well, just holding back the dark.
And Hearst is capitalism in writ large. I mean, like
in
he was.
Form,
but I mean, his son is William Randolph Hearst. So I mean, these people have been a blot/black
part of the
cloud in the landscape.
The Citizen Kane shared universe.
I'm starting to see why Jay likes the show.
What?
In terms of very quickly some other stuff that I watched, I rewatched Destroyer, which is Karen Kasuma's one, this is the one with Nicole Kidman.
I like it.
I really like this. It was a second time watch for me.
Kind of Darren, I will rewatch at some point.
It's like, again, one of the things I really like about it is its portrayal of like trauma, not in an abstract metaphorical sense, in a very literal sense. Yeah. And this is again largely down to Kusama as a director. The camera's constantly tracking and pushing. It's over Kidman's shoulder. It's in front of her, and pulling back.
The weight on her, of gravity on her, and trauma.
It's tracking with her as well to create the sense that almost she's being dragged. Because there's a sense of like she's constantly limping. She seems like her spine is.
There's the worst chase scene ever.
Well, when you say worst chase,
I mean the best. There's a foot chase scene in it that
characters are repeatedly knocked down and keep getting back up so they can pound each other and get knocked down again.
They barely walk. Like it's not fast. It's not.
Sprinting. The Will Ferrell ice skating movie,
Blades of Glory.
I am going somewhere with this. There's a chase
I'm sure you are.
I don't have to yet.
Where they're like running through like a public area, but they're on ice skates, so they're it's obviously very strained and difficult. The chase scene in Destroyer is very similar in look to that.
Yeah,
so probably an influence.
Yeah, I mean that's
sure.
But I mean, even like things like Bradley Whitford getting hit repeatedly in the face and his face tearing under but under the sort of pressure of the gun butt, as opposed to being one hit and you're down and this conversation's over. And it's really visceral and aggressive like that. I'm not entirely sure the movie earns some of its narrative conceits. I think it's a little bit too twisty. It's got like a final act development that it doesn't entirely earn, narratively speaking, and I don't think it's entirely necessary.
No, not necessary, but I kind of went with it, but I can take your point.
But, I really, really liked it. I really, really liked it and really appreciate the rewatch of it. Also, first time watch was Alpha, which is the not John Hughes, apologies, that'll be a very different film. The Albert Hughes, story of a boy and the first dog. Which is,
this is has Ronan seen this? This is a dog film.
This Cody Smith McPhee, is it?
Yes, it is indeed, yeah. It is the story of the first boy who domesticates the first wolf, and he becomes the first dog, and he is a good boy until he's not in a twist at the end.
And for God's sake.
But it's...
I'm not happy about that.
No, it's maybe not the twist that you think it is. Oh. But yeah, Alpha, yeah, it looks...
Is he a werewolf?
And now we're going to be guessing all through the podcast.
Is he a robot?
It's a robot dog. Secretly, it's a
Is he a
Westworld
vision
spin-off.
sent from God?
Yeah, he gets Cody Smith McVeigh gets to the end, and it turns out the dog was
it's
dead
a
all
dog.
along. But no,
It's dog spelled backwards.
Grace, you got this, Grace. You blew my mind there.
It looks absolutely beautiful. It's packed with this sort of like heavy saturation imagery, this wonderful
it a real
shots of
dog?
landscapes. It's a real dog for a lot of the film, yep. For the
a
action
lot of the film?
Well, for the action sequences with the
Until
saber-toothed
it's
tiger.
Stunt dog.
Yeah, but
Stunt
say,
dogs.
like, for the action sequence with the saber-toothed tiger, they couldn't throw a real dog in there, man. I mean, think about it, man. Just think about it.
They throw a
Health and
robot dog in
safety.
there, though.
Yeah. It's not good, though, is the problem with it. It makes absolutely no sense. And I mean, I'm fine with big, stupid movies making no sense whatsoever and
Robot
there
dogs.
being no internal logic or
Robot dogs.
consistency within them. But this kind of takes the cake a little bit too far. At moments,
I
it
hate when
feels
films
like...
take the cake too far.
Yeah.
I love that phrase.
And when they mix, when they mix
your
metaphors,
cakes, it's
mix
great.
my eggs into my cake and my metaphor.
You really scrambled that there.
I really did. But yeah, it's got that sort of like, you know, like that Roland Emmerich quality.
Oh God!
You know that Roland where it's
Run
like
away!
Good or bad, Roland Emmerich?
Is there
like,
is there a
it's
choice?
somewhere between the two extremes. Like it's not awful, but it's also not like transcendental. It's just stupid, and it like
It's the day after tomorrow.
it looks beautiful though,
Yes.
which is a shame. But yeah, I can't recommend it unfortunately. And we watched Greta, which is great.
Greta's great fun.
Greta's great fun. It's bonkers. And on rewatch, holds up remarkably well. I was kind of worried about going into it and watching it again.
Me too. I was very worried about that.
But no, it had held up relatively well. I also rewatched Ocean's 13 as well, which is the best Al Pacino performance since Insomnia. The highest bar for an Al Pacino performance to clear.
Ooh.
Hoo-ah, indeed. No, just a grand, charming hangout film, really. It's a bunch of famous people.
Shite, is
That's
what it is.
12. You're thinking of 12.
No, I'm not. I'm thinking
Brad
of
Pitt
both
is
of
aging
them.
really badly.
What?
Who?
Brad Pitt.
No.
I'm just throwing that out there.
You mean
No.
like physically or like as a
Physically,
concept?
He
Okay.
looks like he's turning into cardboard.
Really?
Wow.
He looks like a Dublin Wax Museum
Version of Brad Pitt.
himself.
Sorry, we saw the trailer for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or whatever it's called last night, and I was just like, Sorry,
Oh.
that's no help to anyone. Please
It's a-
continue.
Sorry, that's...
Thank you, Grace, for that. No.
I just you said Ocean 13. I thought Brad Pitt. What was I thinking about Brad Pitt recently? Oh yeah, he looks like shit.
Brad Pitt looks like shit. That's like a football.
It really is.
Brad
Yeah,
Pitt
the
played
football
football.
chant.
That's
Yeah.
a football chant.
Brad Pitt.
Looks like shit. Brad Pitt looks like shit.
Brad Pitt. Anyway, sorry.
Sugar. It's
Mr.
just
Pitt,
gone
if you're
straight.
listening, I'm very
Yes,
sorry.
Sorry, Brad Pitt. We like to apologise to Brad Pitt. You look great.
Sorry.
He's going to be a sad astronaut in response to
Ah.
this. This is how ad
Who ever heard of a
happens.
sad astronaut?
All around me are familiar faces.
But yeah, anyway, I enjoyed Ocean's 13
Good for
as
you,
like a
good
as,
for
as
you.
watching a bunch of very attractive famous people enjoy each other's company while shooting on location in Las Vegas.
Can I give you my
And
Oceans rankings?
go
Go
for
over
it?
it.
11, 8, 12. No, 11, 8,
What?
13, 12.
Okay. 11, 13, 8, 12.
I'm going with Jay on this one.
Good man.
I think I've only seen Ocean's 8.
Okay.
Ocean 11's great.
11 is really
11
really
I've
good.
seen part
Charming.
of it, but not all of it.
It's very, like, you'll feel like you've seen it all probably from various...
Yeah, I mean, like,
it's culturally
it's
kind
kind
of
of
everywhere.
soaked
But
in.
it's great. It's
I know
really...
There's an
Don
Elvis
Cheadle's playing a
remix.
Cockney, so
It's
yeah.
really dazzling
That bit
kind
is
of...
not good.
No, it's not. But it's also part of its charm in a weird kind of way.
And then I rewatched the entire X-Men franchise
Oh.
because I figured we might as
That
well.
is a journey of highs and lows.
We might as well do this because I figured, look, everybody's celebrating the MCU, hitting the Big
I
Ten.
was going to say
you know.
everybody's celebrating the end of Snyder. Oh, not Snyder.
Snyder, Singer. But yeah, you know, like everybody's celebrating
Singer's
the
not gonna
10-year
win.
mark, the 21 movie mark for Endgame, and I figured somebody might as well hold up a little birthday candle, like in the wind that refuses to light, in honor of the X-Men franchise.
A candle in the wind.
And it is a birthday cake candle in the
Sandal
wind.
in the
We're
wind.
apparently
That's not too late.
we're apparently carrying this metaphor as far as it will go, like a cake.
I'm blaming all
Anyway.
the sugar and the treats that Jay brought us.
Anyway, but
Me too.
it's peaks and troughs is what this is.
Like every good franchise.
Like every good
selection
franchise,
of films,
it's remarkable in large part because it feels like the uncanny valley between like the Marvel movies and older fashioned 80s blockbusters to a certain extent. Most notably in like Wolverine Origin, which is the worst X-Men movie by no, it's not. Second worst X-Men movie by a significant distance.
I have a little soft spot for that just because Taylor
which one?
Kitsch is in it.
Which one?
X-Men Origins
also for that
Wolverine.
part where-
It's the moment where he
I've never
chops
seen
the
that
fire escape like it's lumber, which
I've
is
never
just
seen that
something
one,
to behold.
and I
That
don't
and the
either.
part where he says he's Canadian.
But yeah, there's
For those two things.
That's very
I have a soft
hyper
spot
specific,
for it.
Grace.
it's at its best when it's sort of not sure what a superhero movie looks like and it's kind of playing by its own rules. Like, I quite like, and again, this is the problem with Singer, where it's like, I like X-Men too, but, I feel like I'm never going to watch either of them ever again. But also, it's at its worst when it's trying to do a lot of the MCU stuff, when it looks most like an MCU movie. Watching The Last Stand was a kind of a big shock, because that looks like a really crappy version of Infinity War and Endgame, right down to the big climactic, let's put our superheroes in charge of a bunch of soldiers while a bunch of characters with different superpowers fight on a really generic battlefield background, so that we can just sort of like zoom the camera through it and offer fan service in honor of it. It's kind of, it's weird how it, like, even the mimetic quality of I'm the Juggernaut bitch, which seems to like prefigure a lot of stuff around the way sort of like, you have these mimetic moments sort of sandwiched within.
I don't think I've seen
Memes.
I've
One
seen.
of the-
No, I know that
First
bit. I
big
don't.
meme.
In the context
But
of
again,
this film, I don't think I've seen this film.
X-Men 3, the Brett Ratner version.
I've seen the bridge bit.
Yeah.
It's the bridge bit where
Yeah.
that's all I've seen.
Because, like, we finally got rid of the sexual predator behind the camera. Who will we hire to replace him?
Another
And it's
one.
like another sexual predator. But yeah.
Or, he's not as bad as that guy who we'll bring back.
Yeah.
Matthew Vaughn
least
is
they're
not
of
great.
age.
No, Matthew Vaughn is just like lucky to be in that kind of comparison because he gets to be the good one. By
Hang on, what do
comparison.
you
There's a bit of unconfirmed scandal about that. fella,
Yes,
though.
there is indeed.
Is there?
That's exactly what we're alluding to.
I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of.
Shit, man! If I had problems like
Matthew
that
Vaughn
way,
would
I'd
be
look for a
played by
gig at the
Ethan
X-Men.
Hawke.
Well, I mean, yeah, because comparatively speaking, Matthew Vaughn.
Guys, I've barely molested anybody. Give me an X-Men. You get an X-Men. You get an X-Men.
It's not that kind of scandal.
No, it's not that
Alright,
kind of
There is
scandal.
sort of like a preliminary interview process for directors over, and it's like, tell us about your demons.
Yeah.
And then,
Did you touch
that's a good
anyone?
one. Yeah.
You've just got X-Men 5, baby.
But yeah, it's The Last Stand is kind of one of the most interesting ones there because it feels most like a Marvel Studios blockbuster.
this a Darren
looking
Fascinating
the worst. It's a bad film.
Oh, right,
Let's
okay.
be absolutely clear. But this sort of like fan service of like,
I tried to watch some of it and it was
I
dangerously
saw this
bad.
in the cinema.
Oh, Jesus.
in terms of, it's also again in terms of
remember a
like
lot of it.
the X-Men movies doing Marvel movies badly. X-Men Apocalypse is awful.
It's one of the worst
it's-
movies.
Doesn't
It's
everybody say that?
really
though?
bad.
I think I've never seen the internet as uniform as saying that that's bad. Like, I've rarely seen anybody go back for that film.
right from the
practically
Ivan
ever.
Ooze effect on what's his
Oscar Isaac.
Oscar
no,
Isaac.
but what's the character called?
Apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
It's
I
in the
clearly
title.
forgot that whole detail. Anyway,
The film's really landed a mark on you guys.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I can't
What's
remember the
guy's
name of the villain in Apocalypse. It's
I was
Apocalypse.
like, wait, is he called Apocalypse or is he called something else?
Apocalypto.
Anyway,
Aben
Sorry.
Sur.
it's not good.
No. And again, it's remarkable because it's the X-Men movies trying to do the Marvel movie thing, where it's like, we're going to establish a hot young cast that can carry a franchise for 10 to 15 years. Ha! But we're also going to try and do this big crossover. We're going to include lots of fan service. There's going to be urban devastation at the climax. We're going to level this gigantic city in a CGI monstrosity. There's going to be conflict, but no stakes. And it's kind of, yeah.
There's kind of a fascinating, in the way that they try to have all that interconnectedness. They've tried to reboot several times
Yes.
across the same franchise. The problems of one film end up feeding into another. Like, they introduced that young cast really badly, and that will cause problems for the next film down the line.
Will it? Will it?
And my kind of hot take about the X-Men movies is that none of them are good all the way through from beginning to end. Like, there are a lot of really good moments in a bunch of them, but they all
Even
kind of...
X2?
Even X2, kind of, when you get to the end, I don't know, it has been a while since I've seen it, but a lot of them hit these really hard stumbling blocks, even the good ones, and then a lot of them are the most dreadful little shite.
I'm going to go with a counter hot take and say 8 out of 12 of these are good.
Stop, Darren.
8 out of 12.
I'd lean
That's
towards
not bad
Luke
innings,
than...
though. That's like two-thirds.
That's
yeah,
like
but
solid
Darren's wrong on this, I'd say, though.
I mean,
Well, I think only 3 of them are good, so...
yeah.
Even
I'm
Logan,
harsher
I was
than
never
Darren.
that hot on, so...
But yeah, and I am the harshest critic on this
And
podcast.
the one that everyone universally loves, I don't
Yeah.
like.
Which one?
Logan.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't like First Class.
Logan's
Yes.
great. First Class is the best of
No,
them.
it's not.
First Class is grand.
Dreadful.
First Class is
bad.
great.
No,
it's
it's
the
not.
taps into that again. More superhero movies should be that colorful, that willing to be silly, and that sort of willing to be sort of like to play with.
I quite like
ideas.
Logan, but it didn't really fly the second time around. What to say?
I just remember sitting through it thinking, I've never seen a film more manifestly made for dudes of a
Dudes.
certain age and persuasion.
Yeah,
And it was so off-putting.
all the
Everything about
hype
it was
was
so
about
off-putting.
how mature and serious
Oh my
this
god, we're
this
gonna make
film
Professor
was.
X swear. You
And
guys were so edgy.
Literally walking, because I came in about a minute late, and there's just swearing like right away, and then people are getting their heads cut off. I was like, oh, okay,
See, I couldn't even enjoy the heads being cut off.
it's
What?
Logan's
Yeah,
great.
and normally I love a bit of decapitation.
Leonardo decapitation.
Hi-oh.
My favourite decapitation on my dad. He's creepy and he cuts heads off. Sorry. Go on.
Well, there's your Marvel reboot when
There
they're
you go.
recasting
Leonardo DiCaprio as Decapitator.
Decapitator.
What are the three or
Oh, God,
what are
the
the bad
eight?
ones?
The bad ones. Okay, well, without getting too spoilery.
Just tell us the good ones.
Without getting too spoilery, the bad ones are in ranking, in
Days of
ascending
Future
order of
Past.
terrible badness.
And the first one.
Okay, so Dark Phoenix is the least bad of the bad ones.
Can't wait to see.
I know. Tell me about that.
There's not enough money in the
X-Men
world.
3 is the second least bad of the bad ones.
Okay.
Then we go to X-Men Origins Wolverine, which, despite a sequence in which Wolverine cuts a fire escape like a lumberjack,
Is that the Japanese
awful.
one?
I
Which is
don't
the
think
No,
Japanese
that's
one?
the Wolverine.
I don't think Wolverine
Alright.
is that bad.
And then
Counterpoint.
finally,
I just think it's banal.
Apocalypse. No, it again, it's doing all that universe stuff. It's a Wolverine movie that inexplicably has like 13 different mutants in it. It's
Yeah.
also like rehashing out the best parts of X-Men, not the best parts, but like the leftover parts of X-Men 2 and filling out the rest of it with just like cliches and tropes.
Oh, God,
Like, I
they
mean,
gave us Ryan Reynolds
it's
as well.
at its best. It's at its best when it's like this unashamedly 80s action movie where it's like Wolverine has to go and visit his old combat buddy who now lives in a grimy gym and has vital information, so they have to spar together so Wolverine can get this vital information out of his old combat
And
buddy.
his literal brother is trying to kill him.
Yeah, it's at its best in that stuff. It's at its worst when it's just like, hey, and there's Charlie from Lost and one of the Hobbits, and he can turn on lights. Can we get an action figure,
So
please?
mid-2000s.
Yeah, it really, really is. But yeah, so in terms of the good ones, just in...
There's good ones? Oh, yeah, sorry. We're still on this, are we? I feel like we started this
Okay,
4
fine.
hours ago.
Fine.
The Wolverine, as in the one that's actually set in
Yeah.
Japan, is like 2/3 of a perfect film
I heard
before
it's
it goes.
appalling.
The end is appalling.
The
It
third
goes
act is-
Don't you point at me,
completely-
Grace,
No,
with
it
your
goes completely
insistence.
tits up.
The
All
third
right.
act is a
But
train
the
wreck.
first 2/3
Are really good.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Really, genuinely, so thoughtful and elegant, and they have
And they-
Hiroyuki Sanada in it.
And they
It's
paved the way
perfect.
for Logan. So
You,
they're very
you see the exact moment where the studio notes came in.
Yes. Yeah. Can we get a giant samurai suit, please?
Who directs this one?
This one is James Mangold, in preparation for Logan.
Oh, okay.
One of the villains explicitly identifies herself as capitalist.
Yeah.
You'd be
Yeah.
all in favour watching her get
Yeah.
mangled there, Jay.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
DiCaprio.
By Decapitator. And then I'll give Deadpool, X-Men, Deadpool
I
2,
don't like Deadpool.
Days of Future
no.
Past, X-Men 2,
Stop there. Just
Logan,
Darren.
and
I like Days
First
of
Class
Future
as
Past
the
a lot.
last one.
I quite like
First Class
that.
is the best one.
The ending of Days of Future Past is one of my like really precious memories in cinema. Where I was like, oh my god, they're all alive again, it was
And then
just
they all die in
lovely
Logan.
and happy.
There's
Yeah,
a
but
lot
I
of good
don't like
stuff in-
Logan, so it doesn't count.
There's a lot of good stuff in Days of Future Past. It's just constantly with those movies. They've got so much going on.
Yeah.
They can't keep all the plates spinning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you'll
Well,
have.
Magneto dropping a stadium on the White House in Days of Future Past is a completely
Can
unnecessary...
I just make a point though, and not to be that guy? Although I am going to be that guy.
Okay.
You're not always that.
No.
I'm not always, but
Oh,
today,
you're about to be.
today I'm
You're
going to
about
be,
to
Jay, I will
right.
be.
They're going to fold in X-Men into Marvel, right?
Yeah.
And just talking about plate spinning, how was that even possible without a
Oh, it's a complete reboot.
massacre?
You'd have to do a hard reboot.
They're doing
Yeah,
a hard.
but
They're doing a hard
of
reboot.
what?
Everything. All the roles are going to be recast with the exception of
No.
Deadpool.
I think you're missing my point. How are they going to fold them into
at this
Marvel?
point of the
Well,
Marvel
they're going
universe,
to
how it-
reveal.
There's
in,
like 7,000 Marvel characters at the moment.
They've got it. Apparently,
with the ones
they've got
that
it
fell away.
earmarked for 2021. I suspect.
That's
you'll-
like
What-
that's a
what
like
movie are they gonna
2
use to
years
back
away.
Yeah,
up
I
to
suspect-
release them
it's-
to?
I suspect that you will see a Dark Phoenix movie by 2028 at the latest.
Oh,
Guys,
I
I'm
know,
going
I'm
to say something
oh,
controversial.
God, I'm
I
too old.
honestly don't mind the prospect of the MCU introducing the X-Men.
I don't.
I loathe it.
I don't care for.
but
the
I
idea
like
of
the MCU.
I don't particularly like the
I
X-Men.
like
and
several
I don't
parts of the
particularly like anything
MCU, but
anymore.
I think
And I like X-Men. And I like the idea of the two of them coming
I
together.
thought the Charles and
Especially-
Xavier thing is exhausting. I'm sick of them. We'll come together, then we'll double cross you. We're English.
Yeah.
Fuck off. It's boring. Nobody cares. We've done it for 20 years.
I think you'll find one of them is from upstate New York
It
and the
doesn't
other's from
fucking
Poland.
matter. Look, I'm in a wheelchair. Look, I'm really the evil guy. Oh, Charles, we could...
Would you like to play some chess?
Yeah, put a metal
we're
head on me.
smart,
Oh,
yes.
look. Which English actor has fallen lower down the rungs than Michael Fassbender can we cast? Who cares?
Anyways.
I just don't care.
Did you just
He's
suggest
not
Fassbender might be English?
Now I do, because he's such a bad actor at the moment that I'm happy to...
Anyway.
I'm happy to cast him aside
No,
to the
one way or
pit of
another, you're
England.
never going to give us a sequence as thrilling as when the evil people break into the X-Mansion in X2 and all the kids run riot on them.
Charles, we're never going to be
Well, I mean-
accepted by the humans.
And I have to like edit out that part where Wolverine stabs the guy and yells because it was too disturbing for the Americans.
I don't care for X-Men, and I don't care to see any more of them.
I will be sad to
That's all I
see
gotta
the
say about
weirdness kind of squandered and flattened down into bland
It's
corporate
not weirdness. It's been bland and shite for years, Darren. We just stop with the weirdness.
I can't
It's
believe
a
I'm
creep
the
making them.
optimist
That's the
here.
only thing about it. That's the weirdness about it.
Okay.
He's a creep.
How-
the
how-
rest of
absolutely is.
the films are
This is,
average to shite. And I'm sorry, most Marvel films I've seen are better than practically all the X-Men films. I'm sorry,
So
Darren.
this is a
You were
cause
wrong.
for optimism.
those three
How am I the
best
hopeful
The
one
only way
here?
is up.
The only way is up.
the best X-Men movies are better than the best Marvel movies
Nah.
by a
Let's be
considerable
real here.
distance.
It's been
Nah.
like a solid 20 years since the original incarnation of X-Men cinematically was introduced to us. There are a bunch of kids today who don't know anything about it and don't give a
They
shit.
just released a film
Will love
2
it.
days ago or whatever it was.
but a
That's
new-
enough
a
X-Men.
newer-
Take 10 years out.
Yeah, no, like I would be quite happy to retire them and not have them come back at all. And I'm kind of dreading the prospect of Marvel presents the
And
Dark
can
Phoenix
we
saga.
end Bryan Singer's career?
We should. Well, I mean, that's
Stop renting the
non-negotiable.
movies or buying the movies because he gets dollars every time you do it. Torrent them.
I already own X2
Yeah.
jokes on
Yes,
him.
again, I already paid.
Torrent all them,
And
lads. Don't pay for any more ever.
And I don't imagine I will ever be going back to
And
them
Torrent
again.
Bohemian Rhapsody, don't buy it because Bryan Singer directed that, no matter what the cover says.
Thank you, Matt
Sorry.
Sites.
Thank you. Anyway.
Well, now.
All right, let's move on
believe I
to
was
talking about the
hopeful
week
now.
in film news.
What? We're still here?
This has been the weekend.
This is apparently.
This has been a week, hasn't it?
Anyone is still listening to this, I'm sorry.
We've got some good news for Grace, actually, because the South
we?
Korean Film Institute has actually put 200 titles
Yes.
on YouTube. So you can visit
I don't know about this.
Yeah, so
Tim Guy Lodge actually did a highlight thing in the streaming thing on the
I probably
Guardian
have
about
Guy
it.
Lodge muted, which is...
I know in his Guardian streaming thing every Monday, I think it's quite good and quite informative.
Yeah,
and he talked about a few of the films.
they're
recommended.
completely free. You can watch them. They're from the 60s, the 70s.
The searching of it
And
apparently is a bit tricky, but
Grace is actually literally
I'm looking
on
it up right now.
YouTube
Watching
right now, watching one of these. So yeah,
on her Apple Watch, she's watching it
Yeah.
on the smallest screen imaginable.
yeah.
Oh, she's
I'm
not.
watching it on a Korean phone. This is very
Appropriately enough.
fitting.
But yeah, so just to raise awareness and sort of make people
Yeah, no,
aware of
that's
that,
what's- yeah,
it's
that's
very
good.
worth
It's a
sort
good
of
thing, it
seeking
is.
out, and it's absolutely free. We talk a lot in this podcast about making movies available to people, and that's a phenomenal
We do,
thing.
Darren.
We would absolutely love
We
if, again, the funding isn't necessarily there for Ireland to do something like that, but it would be great to see.
Here's a tenner. Put up
The
something that nobody will
willingness
watch.
has to be there as well.
Watch it in standard definition. All of it. Sorry.
In terms of that, the Galway Film Fleadh, which we're very, very excited about, have announced some of their first
Varda,
films.
Varda. Sorry.
Corinne
Well,
Yanis.
let's build. Let's
All
build.
right, let's build.
All right.
Okay, hit me
So
with
the closing film is going to be the international premiere of Never Grow Old, which is
It's the Ivan Kavanagh Western with John Cusack.
and Emile Hirsch.
And Emile Hirsch. I've heard mixed to interesting things about this.
It's the premiere, Jay.
No, it's been out in the States and it's on
Oh, the
VOD and everything.
international
Like it's the
premiere.
international
Okay,
premiere.
the
It's been
international
out a while.
I
so
put the wrong emphasis in that.
That's
word.
okay. You emphasise away there.
There's a double bill starring Tyne Daly, which is the Bread Factory
Yeah,
Part
which
1
is supposed
and
to
the
be
Bread
very,
Factory
very
Part
good.
2.
I've heard great things about it.
Which is American Indie. Apparently, it's very good.
And good in American Indie, not Sundance American Indie.
And the Saturday night slot has been given over to Extraordinary, which is a film that we've been tracking on this podcast for quite a while.
Is it?
This is the
Remind me,
directed by
Darren.
Micah Hearn and Enda Lockman.
Okay.
It's the story of a driving instructor who must use her supernatural gifts to save a lonely man's daughter from an aging rock star hoping to use her for satanic sacrifice.
That actually
Good
sounds
Lord.
great. I don't want to see that.
Starring Maeve Higgins, Will
Oh,
Forte,
yeah.
and
That's
Barry
I think that
Ward.
was at South by Southwest, was it?
Yeah, and it actually garnered very good word
Yeah,
of mouth
no, I
in the
remember
others.
now. Sorry, I know I get it.
So I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah, I want to see that.
The Irish Film Institute is heading down with Glimpses of Galway, which is a wonderful new programme of archival films made in and about Galway, which range from the silent movie era of the 1920s through to the 1970s.
To me, eating in Galway restaurants, which is one of my favourite pastimes.
Which is great. You can combine the two things.
Oh, I shall. Don't worry about that, Darren.
My Foolish Heart, which is a stunning modern noir set in Galway's own, starring Galway's own Steve Wall as jazz legend Chet Baker. All right. Fine.
Sure, that'd be grand.
Fine. Let's get you. You know we've been building this.
Sigh of disapproval.
Well, you know we've been
Hit me,
building this.
Darren.
There's a special tribute happening
Say what?
to the legendary French director Agnès Varda,
Yes.
which will include screenings. Well, first of all, her latest film
Yes,
will be
our new
screening.
film.
Her
Our
new
last
film is
film.
there, which we're very, very excited about.
Yes, we are.
But there'll be classic screenings as well, including Clio 5 to 7,
Yeah.
Un chant l'autre pas, Vagabond, The Gleaners and I, Le Pointe Courte, and Varda par Agnes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. This
Sorry,
is great.
I
I've
apologize.
seen most of those. The IFI had them last year, a good chunk of them. The new film, I am tremendously excited to see. Bar the Season Never Ends.
Yeah.
It's always Barda season.
It's always Bar the Season.
Part of festival, yeah.
Barda toujours no care.
Exactly.
In terms of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland, the Canadian Media Fund, and the Northern Ireland Screen have announced yesterday, as we're recording this, the 2019 rounds of their co-development funding scheme.
Did I get any money this time?
At the Celtic. Your Countess Markovich film, I believe we're very, very excited
Got
about
20
this.
quid towards developing, which is great.
For you to buy 2 pints, exactly,
And think about it.
in her honour.
But yeah, so they've basically, yes, they've announced them. You can apply, actually, if you want.
Hello.
Yeah. Don't try not to sound stoned.
No, I want my Markovitz money.
You want...
I want that juicy check.
You want to
develop.
make your Markovich.
Hey.
Thank you very much. I can't believe it took me 4 weeks to come up with
know,
that
right?
one. But yeah, you can apply for funding there up until noon on September 19th, 2019. There's a lot of money invested in there. There's €133,000 or 200,000 Canadian dollars, which is available for
Can you pick
claiming.
which one you want?
Depending on how the market's going.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Can I take the dollars? I
The
feel it's
exchange
going to be
rate
good money.
currently favours euro.
Yeah.
The maximum contribution for each project will be €33,000 or
pretty decent.
50,000 Canadian dollars.
Very decent.
Which is very good. You should be
Yeah,
able to hopefully
definitely.
do something of use with that. Finally, worth noting that the programme has been announced for the inaugural China-Ireland International Film Festival, which will be running from June 24th due to June 29th, which will be taking place. It's going to see a varied selection of Chinese films with a series of Irish, and it's going to be a two-leg thing. Apparently, this half is taking place here, but they'll also be screening Irish films in China in 2020 as well, which is great. So this is being hosted by the China Changchun Film Group Corporation, which is one of the largest studios in China. They'll be presenting some of their highlights, including Jackie Chan's 1911, The Revolution, starring Chow Yun-fat. They'll be producing The Sun. And they'll also be showing Cableway Doctor and the Woman Behind the Man.
Where are these being screened?
These are being screened UCD, I believe, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, they're being screened across Dublin, actually, to be clear. So, like, the 1911 screening will be taking place on Monday the 24th of June in the Lighthouse Cinema Screen 1.
Very good.
Mr. Deng Goes to Washington will be in the Lighthouse Cinema Screen 1. Once, which is a modern-day musical set in Dublin, will be screened. Oh, yes, Once.
Is that
Yes.
once?
That's our Once. That's
That's
our
modern day
Once, yeah.
screening. Oh, yeah.
Will be taking place in
It's
Johnny
travelled
Fat
very well.
as Glenn
City World
Hansard.
Screen 6.
And she-
The Crossing,
yeah.
actually, which screened at the Dublin Film Festival, and which I really enjoyed, and which I'd wholeheartedly recommend seeking out, will be screening on Tuesday, the 25th of June, at 3:30 in the afternoon in Lighthouse Screen 3. So if you want to go see something, I've seen that and would recommend that.
Maybe I will.
The Assassins will be screening at 3 o'clock on Wednesday the 26th. The Sword Identity airing at 8:30 that night. On Thursday, there's the screening of The Woman Behind the Man in UCD, which will be taking place at noon. And yeah, so it's running all week.
Very good.
Very worth seeking out. Song of the Sea actually will be airing as part of the Irish segment, including a post-screening Q&A as well, if you're interested in that.
Lovely.
That'll be taking place at 3 o'clock in Cineworld Screen 6 on Friday the 28th of June. So very, very worth seeking out. It is also worth noting that in international film news, the trade war between the US and China is apparently hitting American indies, which is interesting as well. Because again, a lot of the money that's financing those films as well is coming through China these days, increasingly. So,
Trump.
Yep. So there's been some note in terms of that as well. So in terms of your international politics and film news, that's probably worth flagging there.
I was going to mention that the Korean Film Festival is happening next week, but I've just looked it up and it's already all sold out, so that's probably no help to anyone.
Which is great.
Unless they already have
if
tickets.
you already have tickets, remember that it's taking place.
Remember it's happening
I meant to look it up and forgot.
between the 13th and the 15th.
God damn it.
It sells out really fast.
I'll throw them away, actually. No, shit. Anyway.
Anyway, I'm going to see 3 films, so I'll report
Nice,
back.
enjoy.
All right, then, let's move on to everybody's favourite part of the podcast, the top 10.
Woohoo!
I believe Luke has seen 7 of these.
I think so.
Jesus, Luke.
Fairly.
So let's run through
We never
them.
talked about Batman Forever.
All right.
No, next time.
Laters.
At,
Sorry, continue.
at number 10, Luke, have you seen Paw Patrol Mighty Pups?
Oh yes, that's Bad Puppy. Point of call. New Paul. The scene with the dog smokes the crack pipe was particularly harrowing. No,
I always
Directed
knew
by wearing
he
a
had
hair
a glint in his eye.
At number 9, it's The Hustle, which has earned nearly €500,000 at the Irish
Jesus.
box office today, 422,000.
You don't even need good reviews, do you? Just be a
just
comedy.
be funny.
Just
Or not
look
be
like
funny.
something that
That would be a
felt
comedy.
tempting.
Where is that money for Booksmart? I mean,
That's the question.
I've
I mean,
seen that
to be
one.
fair, the threshold to get in this week was only €23,000.
It's been lower than that.
Booksmart's out for
That's
another
not bad.
week.
Yeah, and to be fair, it did open on Monday night, so it's possible that that weekend was sort of spread over the week as a whole. Although I think the numbers don't quite indicate that, unfortunately. But yeah, so you have not seen The Hustle. Nobody here's seen The Hustle. All right. At number 8, Avengers Endgame.
Still going.
I've seen a film.
€6.2 million at the Irish box office. We're less than 100 million off Avatar at the moment, claiming the top movie of
Probably
all
not gonna
time
get there,
spot.
is
It may just miss, but all you have to do is just do a re-release a year or two down the line.
Yeah.
Interestingly, in terms of film news, worth noting that Robert Downey Jr. has thrown his weight behind artificial intelligence as the future of mankind, apparently having learned nothing from his own movies.
Yeah.
what can go wrong?
Or indeed a notable movie of Chris Evans, i.e. Snowpiercer.
But yeah, so he's arguing that like the future
Notable.
of climate change can be could be averted with nanobots.
No.
Oh, please stop Robert Downey
We've
Jr.
literally-
That thing
He's
up
got too
there,
much money.
Darren.
He's too much
The
money.
cloud.
That's the end game.
Somebody take the money off Robert Downey Jr. It's too much money and too much time now.
In terms of, we did plug the, Korean Film Institute, so we should probably plug Robert Downey Jr.'s YouTube channel, which has videos on this very topic,
No, we
if they
should
are
not
of
do
interest
that.
to you.
We should just continue plugging the Korean Film Institute.
Also, in stupid news, there was a Marvel.
What a segue!
A Marvel
petition
petition
to change...
to bring Robert Downey Jr. back from the dead.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know, because people are
Just
fucking
why?
idiots.
Like, do you want him to still be making these films when he's 84?
Which is in 5
I
years'
think
time.
I think Disney would quite like that, actually.
He would.
He
We're
would
only...
be enslaved by his own robots by that time.
It's being beaten up by all his...
Ultra is a very big fan of Iron Man 84. And that's not the year that it's set, to be clear. In terms of other movies that are released,
Go on.
John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum is at number 7,
Oh,
having
I've
earned
seen this.
€587,000 at the Irish box office to date.
Show me what you got.
Not a quote from the film, Jay.
No, it's not. That's Rick and Morty.
I like this a lot. This was very good. It is not as good as the previous two, which I feel goes without saying. I think it's a little bit too long, and it takes a very circuitous route to more or less get back where it started.
Yep.
And unlike the second one, I don't think the world building, it doesn't really work for me anyway. It all seems a little bit tokenistic, whereas I felt like there was a lot of imagination put into the world building in the second one. But all that being said, it is very, very, very fun. Really just an absolute joy to watch. Like, I could sit there and watch Keanu just murder people with knives for hours.
And horses. Don't forget horses.
And the horses. Like,
murder
actually
horses
using
with
the
knives?
horse.
No, he murders
right.
people with horses.
Yeah, he uses the horse to murder people. And also there are dogs that, like, bite people in the balls and destroy them, and they run up walls, and it's great.
Yeah, it's
and then,
all really rad.
but
He's
then
killing people
also,
with
the best
books.
part,
Yeah, that sequence is great.
but then he returns the book to the library shelf in the correct
That's
place.
not hygienic!
It may not be
But it is
hygienic,
fine.
but it is orderly.
It is, in fairness. It's
when somebody
it's how
says I
library should be
literally
treated.
devoured that book, that's not what they mean.
But also, this has Mark Dacascos in it, who is fabulous.
So good.
He's so good
Sorry,
in
who's he?
everything I've seen him in.
Is he from what was he in? Was it Cradle to the Grave? What's the movie I'm thinking of?
I don't know what movie you're thinking of, but I know him
It
from
was Cradle to the Grave.
the Crow Stairway to
Oh,
Heaven
okay.
TV series, which I actually really liked, mainly.
Action
because-
extraordinaire.
Yeah.
Also,
And-
Hawaii Five-0.
And Fanboy, John Wick Fanboy, which is probably the...
And
Yeah.
that enthusiasm comes like brimming through.
Yeah.
The way that the character treats
Yeah.
John Wick is so entertaining because he's so starstruck by him.
He
but
gets
also needs to
some
kill
wonderful
him.
moments.
Listeners
in this
can't
too.
hear Jay shaking his head. But I
I
assure
didn't
you
say
it
a
is
word.
happening.
These movies are
I know
great.
what you mean.
Yeah.
This one I really, really liked. The kind of circuitous nature of it, I actually kind of appreciate on a scoff, if you will, thematic level, because John Wick is really like he's Sisyphus as the action hero. You know, he's kind of trapped in. He's been dragged into this underworld and is kind of trapped in it.
Well, literally, like the lobby man is called Sharon.
Yeah, you have all that
It's not
kind
exactly
of
subtle.
religious imagery. You know, he has to go and do impossible tasks, and here he's like making deals with the devil and all that kind of thing. All of which kind of is really entertaining, and he kills a guy with a book. And these movies are great.
Yeah.
I can't wait. for
There are
that,
some wonderful shots on this too, like
Oh, yeah,
people
the
literally
desert.
melting out of shadows,
Yeah.
and that one scene in the ballet theater as well.
Yeah. And the use of lighting, the use of neon,
Yeah.
the reflective surfaces are fantastic as well, and
It's
also
just-
very
it's a
thematically
visual
relevant as
treat.
well. and,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, if all action movies looked this good as well as being this relentlessly enjoyable, then we would live in a much happier world.
relentlessly enjoyable is definitely the way to say it. The amount of like glass that
Oh,
he
yeah.
gets thrown through in two separate sequences.
Yeah.
In this
There's a
film.
room made of glass, which
Yeah.
exists, you have to wonder if the architects in the John Wick first are like, well, you know what this is going to be used for.
But it's that kind of Buster Keaton level of.
Well, I mean, it opens with, is it the General playing on a screen
I think
on
that's
Times
two,
Square?
but at
Oh,
the
this one
end,
has Sherlock Jr.
Yeah, Sherlock Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, this one has Sherlock Jr. then, apologies.
Also, I will say, sorry, then I'll let you move on. I went to see this with my sister who hasn't seen the other two, and she had an absolute blast, and I was like, wait till I show you the others. They're going to be so much more fun.
And I actually, like, to be honest, I quite like the thematic aspect of it as well. It's very much, it's a blockbuster that Chidi from The Good Place could enjoy, because it's a movie fundamentally about what we owe to each other.
Yep.
Very fun.
Plus, you know that bit in that kind of recurring joke in Lord of the Rings where Legolas and Gimli are keeping count of the number of people that they kill? I like to think of Sophia's dogs as doing that, but they're keeping count of the number of balls that they ripped up, which is very enjoyable. They're great dogs.
Yeah, it's an inventive way of playing ball with your dog.
Yeah. The part where one of them runs up a wall, it's just wonderful.
I imagine this is probably not going to generate as much enthusiastic conversation, but at number 6, it is Tate Taylor's Ma.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't seen this.
Ma is not really good. Well, Ma is. Like,
I've heard
it's
interesting
never
things
boring.
about this.
It's what.
What more could you ask?
Sorry.
It's that kind of schlocky kind of thriller that is. Well, it ought to be kind of propulsive enough and mad enough that you're never bored watching it. The problem with Ma in that is that it really kind of is treading water for so much of it. The premise is that these kind of teens who are some of the stupidest teens in recent movie memory. They,
Even more so than the teenagers in Halloween last year? Because they were pretty thick.
These ones are quite bad.
God.
Quite dumb. They are trying to get adults to buy beer for them so that they can drink in the middle of this like go nowhere town. The only one that will do it for them is Octavia Spencer, who's this kind of isolated, traumatized woman you kind of see in these unfortunately relentless and unnecessary flashbacks. The reason that she is the way that she is and the stuff that she went through when she was in high school as caused by all of the parents of that's kind of where we're going here. So she buys drink for these kids and is like,
So we're
come and
talking
drink in
Nightmare on
my
Elm Street sort of thing, is it?
come and drink in my well basically, but it's like come and drink in my basement. And all the kids are like,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
And then it's like, also, I'm a thriller serial, like I'm, bananas. And they're like, we're going to keep drinking here anyway. Like the kind of suspension of disbelief the moment that they start laying it on thick with Spencer is it's just too much. And you're kind of sat in a very long second act where the one character who should know that better than this, she's actually in Booksmart.
Oh, is it?
I'm never good with character names.
She plays the bully, if I remember correctly, right? The one who...
The girl in...
The one who...
The girl in Maz, the girl...
Spoiler
Yeah,
with-
that's the one,
Yeah.
So she kind of suspects that something's up, but she keeps going back to that damn basement over and over again. And, like, Spencer is having fun, but she needs to be given more to do in that case. Kind of doesn't go crazy enough a lot of the time, and then when it does, you kind of you want a bit more. There's one particular scene that's very graphic in a very surprising way. In case you want to see it, I won't say too much more than that, but it is very full frontal and kind of you wouldn't expect it to go there. But just needed a bit more. Is all.
All right, in terms of movies that you don't expect to go there, at number 5, tipping over €1 million at the Irish box office, it's Pokemon Detective Pikachu.
Oh, the best movie of the year. Yeah, I know.
We're very... we are in June, and there is a very solid chance that Pokemon Detective Pikachu may be the best blockbuster of the year. That is where we are at this moment in time.
A lot more about blockbusters than...
I mean, little from column A, little from column B.
He's a very good boy, Jay.
Yeah.
You're low
Why
threshold. You see too many movies. You have such low thresholds.
Why you gotta pick us so many holes in it, huh?
Somebody stop him. Somebody stop him.
That was a Pokemon, not an Italian. Apologies for the...
When's the euro dal mio day?
At number 4, opening at number 4, meaning that the top 3 are essentially unchanged from last week.
Fabulous.
It is Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Having taken €269,000 at the Irish box office, which is quite a haul to landing at number 4, €250,000, not bad.
This is so bad, even Graham doesn't like it.
No, that's another one.
Graham's a good threshold for blockbusters that a lot of people are not, would you say, big fans of. And if Graham says it's terrible, I'm going to heed that warning.
I think you guys may be thinking of another film.
Oh, Dark Phoenix?
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
But
I'm going to ignore that, though.
Universally terrible reviews of this.
Yeah.
I really wish that this was a lot better. I'm actually a big fan of Gareth Edwards' Godzilla
2014.
I know it's a very frustrating film in a lot of ways, but I really liked the sense of scale that it developed and stuck to. And
I liked the trailer.
Me too.
Sorry.
That's fair enough. Like I can absolutely understand why people wouldn't like that film. I can't understand why anyone would like this film. It's because it is in drips and drabs aiming for that same sense of scale and adding or kind of building a kind of a sense of awe for the monsters that are in it. But just because you're trying to have themes doesn't mean that you have them.
Yeah.
And this film is so stupid. It's really
it's so tonally all over the place. Like there's a sequence where Washington is both flooding and burning, and there's a plane full of adorable kids who desperately need shelter from a flying monster. And the characters pause to do a joke where it's like, "Can somebody help me get the door open?" And then the nerdy character stands up and says, "I can help." And then the other character pauses and goes, "Anyone else?" And you're like, what are you doing? What is the scene? What editing decision did you make at this moment that brought you to this point?
It's shocking.
Can I ask a question? So I've seen a lot of memes doing the rounds about Mothra and whether Mothra is innocent or guilty. Can someone explain this meme to me in the context of this film?
Honestly, no, because I couldn't see anything that Mothra was doing.
Okay.
Because the problem with the monsters in the movie is that every time that they're on screen, it's lashing CGI rain.
It's also the backgrounds are whited out or they're red. They're sort of like, and they're the same dusty color as the monsters themselves. So, for example, Godzilla, whose color is neon blue, is set in the backdrop of a blizzard for some reason, which is white, which means that, like, it looks pretty in still images, to be fair to it, but when they're in motion, you get a headache.
good.
You have like Rodan, who is
visually incomprehensible.
Yes.
Like their attempt to emulate that kind of Edward's scale is just to make you not know what's happening because there's
Who
just
directed
one.
this?
This is the Krampus guy.
Yes, the guy who directed Krampus.
Oh, I would have expected better.
Well, you never know. You might love it. There are people who do love this, right?
All 4 of them.
But yeah, it like visually, it's incomprehensible. You have characters get killed off here that it really doesn't communicate that that's happened at all.
Like, I mean, like, this is the thing. This is a movie that fridges, like, 2 of its 3 female leads. Yeah. But it doesn't fridge them.
The other one only fridged 1.
But it doesn't fridge them properly because the male characters don't even acknowledge that they're dead. Like, I mean, it fridges Mothra, to pick an example. Which is a very strange choice.
Maybe this is something to do with Mothra.
Yeah, possibly.
But there's a moment where like a character from Godzilla dies in the middle of an action scene, and it was edited so incomprehensibly that I had no idea she was dead until they were like, "Oh, she's dead."
One of the characters to give you an understanding of the depths of this is that Zhang Ji plays twins in this. Apparently,
okay.
I had no idea. Yeah. There's allegedly...
That's the sound of Rodan going over my head.
There's one scene in this where that character is in a certain location.
Yes.
Which she couldn't possibly be in because all the characters are in a, plot inner traveling. Yeah,
they're in like a
altogether
like a Quinjet from Avengers or whatever. Yeah.
But she's back at base camp, and I was like, how is she there? But it's all done edited so frenetically, it didn't really sink in. And then when I came out and I looked it up,
actually, she's twins.
They're twins.
You know what I had that realization
the other character
with?
never shows up again in any other scene.
And there's never a mention of my sisters. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking. I saw a film relatively recently where there were twins, and I didn't know they were twins, and it was There Will Be Blood. It was only like the very end. I was like, wait, there were 2 of them. What? That was very confusing.
At least there are other indicators in this that this is on the fault of the people.
Very, very much.
And, you have cities being laid to waste in the middle of this.
And nobody seems to care. There's no sense of scale. It's like cut to Bradley Whitford.
We make fun of Emmerich, but at least when a city is being destroyed in one of his films, you fucking know that it's happening.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Like, I mean, there's a moment that, like, the sequence where Washington is burning and flooding simultaneously is just an establishing cut. It's a very strange choice. There's a moment where like a giant like woolly mammoth type creature is rampaging through somewhere in East Asia, it looks like geographically, but the film never really comes back to that. It's just like,
And no more than saying you have themes means that you have themes. Saying that you are respectful of the kind of history of this character or this franchise doesn't mean that you are. Like, when you have Rodan show up in Mexico and the locals call it Rodan, it's like, well, how do they?
do they really?
When you have, I don't know. I think all American adaptations of Godzilla, even the 2014 one, have this thing where they realize that it's based off of, or inspired by
the atomic
bombs, and they think that they get that, but they're from America, so they don't. You have a scene in this where, like, using nukes saves the day.
What?
And on a thematic level, that's just
wrong.
Well, this
wrong.
Well, this is the thing. We talked about this. I think we talked about Akira a little while back, and how Akira is basically what happens if you filter the American superhero sensibility through a Japanese sensibility, where the American fantasy is like, power is fucking amazing. Why wouldn't you want power? And Japan is like, I can see why you wouldn't want power. And like you have that with Godzilla, where like to Japan, Godzilla is like this big rampaging monster that causes untold devastation, destruction, maybe a cleansing force, but a horrific one at that. Then you have Godzilla King of the Monsters, which is like, that's a metaphor for nukes, right? You know what nukes are really good at doing? Blowing shit up. There's a moment where like, so you have the character of, I can't pronounce, is it Shinwaza? The character played by, what's his name? Ken Watanabe.
I only know Ken Watanabe.
Ken Watanabe.
Don't pick up on
So
these characters.
Ken Watanabe, like, to be fair to Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, Watanabe's character there is a representative of the character's Japanese legacy to a certain extent. And his attitude towards the two monsters is let them fight. Serizawa, who's named for the character in the original Godzilla from the 1950s. And he, in the 2014 Godzilla, his role is to say, look, let them fight. Because he understands that humanity has no stake in this. That, like, they have no influence or no power over these vast forces that are at work in the world. Which is a relative, as far as American understandings of Godzilla go, that's a reasonable one. That's like a passing grade. It's like, you did the reading. I'm not sure you understood it, but, I'm not going to flunk you. Whereas on the other hand, like, the issue with Godzilla King of Monsters, when it gets to the Godzilla metaphor, is that you have, it's like, he's gonna fight, and it's like, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna order people to fall back? And Kyle Chandler, all-American dad, says no. This time we join the fight.
Oh, for God's
in which
sake.
Godzilla King of the Monsters effectively, like, enlists Godzilla into the US Air Force. It's something to, like, I think that that's
Can
a very...
you enlist a giant sentient kaiju into the Air
I
Force?
mean, how would you fit the uniform?
Do you have
it's
jurisdiction?
absurd, like.
I think it's a very revealing exploration of, like, the cultural difference between, if you want to be generalized and you want to sort of, like, broad assertions and stuff like that, I think there is a representation of a cultural difference there in how Japan and America view that level of power, in that, like, Godzilla King of Monsters, like, yeah.
I mean, that'd be
We gotta get ourselves one of those.
That would be a massive hat.
This kind of very brief 2-sentence summary I saw on Tumblr years ago, where they were like, in Japan, radiation creates monsters. In America, it creates superheroes.
Yeah, that's it exactly.
Isn't that interesting? Whatever that comes from.
Yeah, it's entertaining in moments where Godzilla is wrecking other monsters and stuff like that, when you can actually see what's happening, which is almost never. And the scene where you reach that nadir of our wonderful nuclear advances, and we'll say us all, with Ken Watanabe. That's actually, in terms of the actual directing of the scene, it's actually the best scene in the film.
But it's
because Watanabe is great.
Yeah.
The camera is showing you what's happening. Yeah. It's
the surroundings
it's showing
are
an emotion
interesting.
and all that. And then it ends with something completely wrong-headed and stupid.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this is a movie that goes from King Ghidorah is a giant invading alien to Godzilla's just taken a nap in Atlantis to we have to nuke Atlantis.
Within,
in the space of
5 minutes.
Yeah, 5
Did you
minutes.
say Atlantis or Atlanta?
Atlantis.
Stop.
Like, in the space of 5 minutes. Nobody's ever like, I have a question.
But Godzilla as a franchise, you can go into that kind of dippy, mad,
but
bananas kind of
We have to
stuff,
establish
but
it
not
within
with
the
the
film,
sense
like.
of self-seriousness
that
this is,
that's exactly
is bringing. And like I've seen people say that the number of human characters and the emphasis on their storylines in this, well, all the Godzilla movies have that. Yeah, but like, there are so many characters in this that you don't need.
Yeah, Thomas Middleditch's
Twin
character is the
sisters.
most obvious one.
Yeah, because there's so many of these characters that
you can just shift the roles
fold
around.
into each other.
Like, you don't need Bradley Whitford and Thomas Middleditch.
No.
You don't even need one of them, but you can pick one.
You don't even need Charles Dance
as the eco-terrorist who does nothing.
Yeah. And this happens over and over again, where a character's actual purpose in the narrative ends, and they are just hanging around.
Yeah.
Like, eat them, crush them, do something, get the fuck out of here.
Charles Dance just wandering to the catering table.
Let's move on. The more I think about it, the better.
At number 3, Rocketman, which I believe Grace has seen.
Yes, I have seen.
I've seen it too.
Yeah, I like this. This was actually better than I was expecting it to be honest. I think maybe because Bohemian Rhapsody left such a terrible taste in the mouth that I was like, okay, well, anything that's not blatantly homophobic is probably a good start. And Rocketman is not, as far as I can tell, blatantly homophobic. Anyway, I also liked, even though I'm not really a big fan of musicals, but I like that this is structured more like a musical.
Yes, with the
and
fantasy sequences.
It omits a lot of the really terrible... Now, there are a lot of pretty terribly cliched biopic genre moments in here, but the musical moments and the more kind of flamboyant elements like that give you an opportunity to omit a lot of them, which I did like. The only bugbear that I really had with this was that I really felt it needed a more theatrical director, and when I say that, I mean someone who can make musical sequences like that look a bit more arresting and visually exciting. because I think, like, I like Dexter Fletcher, but I think, like, whatever about the kind of more everyday scenes in this, which are fine, like, you know, they work as well as they do, but I just feel like you needed someone with a bit more visual sensibility to bring out the real fantasy and heightened elements of the musical parts. And I think this stood out to me even more because I recently rewatched Moulin Rouge, and as those of you who have seen Moulin Rouge will know, there's a pretty magnificent cover of Your Song in the middle of that, which is done just beautifully. And then just to go from that, which I know is a whole other movie, but to see like the type of theatrical setup that you could create in a film setting for something like that, and then go into this where they all felt a little bit flat to me, I thought was a bit of a shame. But it's a good film. I think it's well put together otherwise, and I think the cast is good, and it's enjoyable. Wouldn't say it'll stick long in the memory afterwards, but it's fun.
Yeah, I agree with all that actually. The musical scenes are the most entertaining part of the film, and it is giving you that sense of this is why this person is an icon, and this is why this person is the way that the film shows them to be. And the kind of stereotypical biopic moments in this, you can kind of go along with them a little easier because the fantastical elements kind of you're in that place where it's okay, well, it's not real, it's
it's heightened, it's fantasia.
Now if even the mundane scenes had that kind of more fantastical direction,
like
that
a
would have
lightness
helped
of
that.
touch. Yeah,
it's kind of more like you're switching from a musical into a kind of a
more conventional
kind of thing. But it's enjoyable. Like it's got good performances, except Bryce Dallas Howard
as cartoon pantomime villain mom sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's bad.
I never loved you.
Yeah,
I
but
hope you know that you're choosing to never be happy.
Like these are not like just, we're not quoting subtext, we're actually quoting text.
I can imagine.
the difference between this and Bohemian Rhapsody, I think, or the big difference is that the musician that produced this is also
alive,
and still alive,
And
which
very
has
heavily
its
involved.
positive and has its negative.
Yeah.
Lerman would have actually been perfect for what this is going for. You know?
I was just thinking after watching Moulin Rouge, I miss Baz Luhrmann. This is possibly one of my more controversial opinions, but I really like him.
He goes up to 11. I don't think anybody can dispute that. You know, you've seen the film.
When it works, it works beautifully.
I know it does.
Like, I mean, the Red Curtain trilogy is chef's kiss emoji, but Australian not so much.
We're not going up to 11. We're going
Anyway.
to number 2, which is Secret Lives of Pets 2.
Shockingly enough, I have not seen this. I've seen the first one though. That was enjoyable.
I'm seeing
Enjoyable in a very disposable way, but enjoyable nevertheless.
How secret can these lives be if this is the second one?
Yeah, and it's already earned 800,000 euro. I mean, it's an open secret.
The Secret Lives of Pets is a waste of a name for a children's film. It should be kind of a 1950s
Noir, sort of like,
no, like a suburban drama, you know.
Revolutionary Road, but with cats. At number 1, it's Aladdin.
I've not seen
I
it.
completely forgot this was a thing.
It's fine.
This is what happens when you have to have one of these movies come out every 2 months.
Well, that's it exactly. I mean, like Lion King is coming out in July, for
Jesus,
example, on the
Mary,
20th of July.
Please
yeah?
stop. Please just stop.
This is serviceable, competent. Again,
Everything
you never
about it looks utterly lifeless.
Yep, that's it exactly. Which is ironic for a live action inverted commas adaptation of an animated film. But in transitioning to live action, you strip out everything that made the animated film so great. You're erasing the value of that medium to a certain extent. The casting of Will Smith is good. The music is still as good as it was, although again the performances in live action don't work. Largely the same songs. There is one additional song, which is an I Want song for Jasmine, which is theoretically a good choice, but which doesn't work because the lyrics weren't written by, is it Howard Ashman, who obviously passed away while he was working on
trickier to
so
make
a
the right
trickier
lyrics.
get.
Yeah.
It's written by the two guys who are responsible for... I'll remember it afterwards and I'll feel very bad. But
I never liked that film.
they're just responsible in general. But yeah, they're the two guys who wrote they've written a bunch of musical... Greatest Showman. They wrote the music for The Greatest Showman.
Oof.
Smash, right?
And possibly
another
Sing.
movie.
Yeah, and another movie as well. All right, let's move on to the new releases this weekend. So, very quickly, Dirty God is out, which is Sacha Pollock's film, which is about an acid attack in London.
What's it?
Dirty God. which is a story about a young girl who...
I missed this at the festival because I took the Sunday off. I had a ticket for this, and I didn't go.
Halston is also releasing this weekend, which is a documentary looking at the fashion designer from the 1970s, who basically had to sort of deal with... Oh, no, it's not. It's a narrative film. Apologies.
No,
it's a documentary.
It's a documentary. But
Sorry, the plot summary makes it sound like a narrative film.
I've had a
Prodigiously
conversation.
talented, Halston reigned over fashion in the 1970s and became a household name. But everything changed in the Wall Street era. With his empire under threat, Halston took the biggest gamble of his life.
There couldn't be any people left to make documentaries in the fashion industry at the moment because they've made literally everyone with a documentary. It's the same with architects, it's the same with everything. Musicians, places people have recorded songs. Stop making documentaries about things, start making documentaries that mean something.
I've seen
Please,
the
and thank
trailer
you.
for this. It does look very identical.
Yeah, I've seen. I haven't seen it, but I feel like I've seen it from the various other films that have been made that look exactly the same as it. See your photographers, see your designers, see your whatever. Stop making identical documentaries, please. Thank you.
All right. Also out this week, the big Irish release of the week is Papi Chulo, which opened the Dublin Film Festival earlier this year. I've seen it. I think Jay's seen it as well.
Yay!
I don't know if,
I have seen it.
I have not seen it.
And it's John Butler's latest film, and I think I liked it least of the people on this podcast.
I think you did. I did like it.
I mean, it's charming, it's funny, it's got a really good first half. I'm not as fond of the second half, but it's got...
Trailer looks a bit odd.
It's a tricky thing. It's a tricky tonally and structurally conceit to get away with because you're kind of skirting disaster at every turn to a lot of degrees. It's a risky movie.
It's a story
to make
about
in a lot of ways,
a lonely TV weatherman who strikes up an unusual friendship with a middle-aged Latino migrant worker.
Yeah.
To give the thoughts on it, which is a minefield of a premise.
It is, and I think it's in fairness to
and
John
to be
Butler,
fair
I
to
think
Butler, he does it.
skirts pretty much
Yes.
everything that could go wrong with that particular premise.
He manages to avoid
pretty much all the pitfalls for all intents and purposes. I somewhat agree with Darren. I think the first half of the film is better than the second half. I think it sets out this kind of story of trying to connect and that kind of loneliness that comes with both a breakup and the kind of lack of communication that you can have.
And even
with
like the Los Angeles setting as well works very well in that.
Yes,
in
it
that
does, and this kind of
respect as well.
cliffside, almost kind of lookout, and a kind of a vast,
Longing.
unknowable kind of place that you can kind of connect it. It does wobble a bit in the second half, certainly. Some issues come into it that doesn't help.
I'm not sure it's entirely equipped to deal with them.
No,
to a
it's
certain extent.
trickier. And
I mean, I appreciate that it's trying, and I think it does a good enough job.
Yeah,
I just don't think that the balance is as good.
No,
as it could be in
I
the
think
second
that's
half.
probably fair. But the two leads are great.
Yes, Matt Bomer and Alejandro Patino, I believe.
They're very good together. They're very good in general in their roles. Both of them get decent amount of screen time. It's not just the Matt Bomer show in that regard, which I kind of appreciate because it would all too easy to give him
the lion's share.
And I think it's kind of fairly even in that regard. And they have an easy charm and chemistry, which obviously is the make or break of these
with a
kind
film
of
like
things.
this,
because there is a kind of a love story in that regard. Like, as people who don't really have any connection or like
who have no reason
to ever talk or be connected other than hiree or something like that. And I like the kind of element to it. It's charming, it's easygoing. It tries probably a little too hard to try and make its points, but I think it gets there for the most part, and I think it's a good audience film. I think people will respond to it in a kind of cinema kind of thing.
It's a very broad, feel-good film. I mean, this will probably sound like a backhanded compliment. I don't mean it as such, but it feels, to a certain extent, like Green Book for the Trump era, in that it's a story.
Jesus, Darren.
Okay, you liked Green Book,
Darren. Stop laying that on me. I feel like you like Green Book as you didn't believe in kind of 9/11 conspiracy theories.
No,
stop saying that because it just makes my heart hurt.
My favourite take on this is still from my sister who's just seen the trailer and she was like, that makes it look like he kidnaps this old man. Now there's a movie.
In a way.
That's actually, to be fair, that's not far off the...
in a mild-mannered kind of way. He kind of...
Kidnaps with kindness.
That's what privileged white
people
do, without even knowing.
Again, you see the minefield that we're talking about. The film has to navigate,
and even the success of it is the fact that it skirts that, even regardless of anything. I think it's good. I liked it. I don't know how rewatchable it is, or how great it is, or whatever, but it's certainly worth getting to see. I would suggest.
Also out this week, the big release of the week, which is surprising given that it's kind of dead on arrival, X-Men Dark Phoenix. which is the end of the X-Men cinematic universe.
Okay, this is a film that's so bad, even Graham doesn't like it.
Yeah, sorry,
Yes, so there we go.
Graham from earlier.
I mean this as a compliment to Graham.
Me too.
He will give
Me too.
everything a chance.
He's
but
much
even
nicer about
this
these
is
things than
too
I am.
much for him, which means it must be awful.
X-Men Dark Phoenix is not a good film. Let's be entirely clear
That
and
seems like
lay
it could be an understatement.
lay this out there. It is at certain points incomprehensible. It is lazy. It is poorly structured. It's uncertain of its themes. You watch it and you know that it has been gutted in the editing booth. Characters don't so much exist as spout things that it's necessary for the plot to have them say. It assumes emotional investment in characters that simply doesn't exist. There's a moment at the climax where Storm and Nightcrawler show up and it's like, we are in this too. And you're like, I kind of forgot that you were, but I appreciate the sentiment. And it doesn't really work in those terms. That said, it is a fascinating film to a certain
it's
extent.
one of Darren's fascinating films. Stop it, Darren.
To a
Get
lar-
away screaming!
It's fascinating because what happens is you hollow out anything resembling a coherent, and you can tell that they went through this with like a shovel to get it under the 2-hour mark. You can tell that like it was designed to be a franchise launcher for the young actors, that it will be like, this will be like another decade of X-Men movies, and then obviously the buyout happened. And what happened actually was that the climax of the film was too close to Captain Marvel. That's why the reshoots were necessary and why it came out after Captain Marvel, which is fascinating. It to a certain extent plays like an unreconstructed version of Captain Marvel, where it doesn't realize that those evil shape-shifting aliens is not necessarily the best cliche that you could be using right now. But at the same time,
Especially in X-Men.
yes, at the same time, because of that hollowing out, there's something very interesting there where it seems to almost be about like the Marvelization of the X-Men universe. The point where the reshot climax of the film has them literally derailing the MCU.
Why
The
do you
mutant
literally blame
control-
Marvel on everything, Darren?
The Mutant Control Unit, as it's known as well, which is fascinating.
Blame DC for a change.
Well, I mean, they aren't really
Except they
directly.
don't
I'm not
actually have
blaming.
any films.
There's no blame. How is
Darren.
there blame?
You're throwing subtle shade at them
How is
all
there subtle
day.
shade?
Come on,
I love
Darren.
Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok's amazing.
That's subtle shade right there.
What?
I love that one film that I like.
Okay, Black Panther's also great.
Stop,
Iron
Darren.
Man
You
3
don't
is
have to defend
fantastic.
yourself, Darren. It's fine,
Avengers
it's
is
fine.
I
great.
saw a little boy in a Wakanda Forever hoodie
Yeah,
yesterday.
I mean, come on, tell me that isn't heartwarming.
That is
Tell me that.
heartwarming.
All right.
Joking, come on.
But yeah, so again, but the issue is that you have this interesting recurring theme where like Charles Xavier has decided to reinvent the X-Men as superheroes.
Charles, can we fight these
Shades on
humans?
his hair, he lost his mind.
There's a moment where he's literally like, superheroes. I don't know what that word means.
Remember when they were just sitting in a room talking about morality? I preferred that.
But no, this is it. Like, Charles has seen the future
Has he?
and has realized that like there's no future for the X-Men franchise. So he's desperately like, fuck, I gotta turn this into a Marvel franchise as quickly as possible.
2 films ago.
No.
What did he miss that he did then that he can't
Then
see
the
now?
fuck-
He
then the-
spoke to... Sorry.
Anyway, that about wraps it up. So people looking for a bit more Luke, a bit more Jay, a bit more Grace in their lives, where can they find you guys online?
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Cynical. That's cynical with an I, and I'm on filmandouble.ie.
At Jay Coyle on Twitter.
I am at Pixie Grace on Twitter and Letterboxd.
Cool. You can follow me at Dan Cormany. I co-host another podcast called The 250, where this week, hopefully, we'll be covering Saving Private Ryan to mark the 75th anniversary of D-Day.
Which is today.
Probably do that check before I record the podcast, just to make sure I have the right year.
You should.
It is the 75th anniversary.
Would you not cover Shaving Ryan's Privates, the porn version?
Good Lord, Jay.
Starring Mr. Biggerstaff, am I right?
John Biggerstaff is Private Ryan.
I don't think we're going to get a better note than that, so take it
Private
easy,
Ryan.
guys. Bye.
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 Bye.